OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Yes, it's Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. You're welcome along. Eoin Sheahan, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian.
Been a nice quiet week on AM today, so we're going to sort of ease people into the weekend. Is that the plan this morning? Less cantankerous than you fellas have been earlier in the week?
It's just been a tough week. Sometimes the weight of the world gets upon us here on OTB AM, and we tend to take it out on Wales every time that tends to happen. So apologies to everybody involved.
I take that with the sincerity that it's meant. There's so much to get to. There's obviously the weekend of the SixNations kicking off, and lots of interesting stuff for that, and plenty more as well besides. But the game last night I watched it last night and I was pretty bored by the entire thing. I must say, I could only leave it with one conclusion, in that it really looks like José's time is up. I couldn't believe the game last night. Like, I mean, you look at it tactically, and José Mourinho parking the bus is not necessarily something that's all that new, but like, you look at the reasons why José Mourinho might have actually gone at that game last night against obviously one of his former clubs, the one he's most associated with, against the new manager to Chelsea, and a newish manager on the scene that José would love to have been able to do one over, and all he could do really was park the bus. It just, I think if you're a Tottenham fan, I'm assuming at this point, and looking at the odds for it around the market for it, he is one of the favourites to get the chop. And I'm assuming if you're a Tottenham fan at the minute, which you very much are not, you're looking at this going, get this guy out of there, get some fresh blood in.
Well, if you're Daniel Levy, are you pulling the plug right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think looking at it last night for those reasons, that José Mourinho couldn't muster something better than that. Poor old Vinicius up front must have felt like he might as well have been sat in row A. There was absolutely nothing coming at him. Like, there was no ambition. There was, it was nearly, you were looking at Son with that opportunity laid on, if you could call it that fizzes over the bar. And you're looking at Mourinho thinking, that he's delighted with that now, because he can go in and go, listen, if one of those chances have just gone our way. But that really, and that's exactly what he said, by the way, the penalty on another night, I mean, I don't know why you can grumble about it at all, but another night, that goes our way. It's a false narrative. Like, Tottenham were hammered 1-0 last night.
And yeah, you're like, I think it will be a massive stretch now to think that José is going to make it to the end of his contract. I think 2022-23 is when he's contracted until. Like, the pressure is going to mount immediately. I think if you're a Spurs fan this morning, you've got to be asking questions about him. I think it's probably a little bit too soon, personally. I think you've got to give José until the end of the season, because it hasn't been a disaster of a season. We can't just forget the brilliant start to the campaign that they had. And half of your job as Tottenham manager is getting the best out of Harry Kane. And before his injury, he was in player of the season form. And when he comes back, there is a chance he'll play himself right back into the box seat to be player of the season. That is your number one ambition that you have to look for when you're a Spurs boss. And José has attained that. He's got unbelievable levels out of Heung-Min Son. Heung-Min Son's form of his career has come under José Mourinho, despite being a brilliant player before José came. So I think he deserves credit for that. There have been times this season where the defence has looked more solid than it did previously. Eric Dyer has at times looked like a reliable centre-back. I think last night proved why he's not a reliable centre-back. And I think José deserves credit for perhaps actually getting more out of that defence than maybe their levels actually suggest. So I think he deserves a break to an extent. But you look at the ambition that this club says they have. The brand new stadium, the Champions League final a couple of seasons ago, sacking the manager that got them to the Champions League final, suggests to me that this is a club who want to have Chelsea levels of ambition, which is winning the Premier League and contending for the Champions League every single season. On the evidence of last night, and certainly on the evidence of their form without Harry Kane, that is not going to happen. And this is a really dangerous thing for Tottenham. What does happen with Harry Kane? Because like, I definitely thought after the pandemic, there were a number of moments under José Mourinho where they looked so poor that Harry Kane just wasn't being utilised to the best of his abilities. And you thought to yourself, God, if you're in Harry Kane's shoes, do you get frustrated to the point where you actually want to leave the club? How long can this possibly go on for, where you're patient enough to say, I'm happy enough to hang around in a team that are just contending for Champions League places? If that frustration manifests itself in reality, if he comes back and the results get worse and there's clearly no sign of hope of winning a Premier League or a Champions League at Tottenham, that question will be asked. There will be offers made for Harry Kane because he's the best in his position in the league. And if Spurs lose Harry Kane, then it's curtains really on their ambition until they regenerate another great team. And that is the tightrope they're now walking, that if it's one or the other, if it's Harry Kane or the manager obviously has to go. But it's not at that point just yet, Adrian, and that's why I don't necessarily agree with you that it's time to pull the plug on José right now.
What was it that Brendan Rodgers said about Luis Suarez? We were really good for each other. Like, there's definitely an element of that with Jose Mourinho and Harry Kane as well. And look at, you're right, if he comes back and he starts banging in goals left, right and centre, then everybody forgets about the negative tactics and the fact that Jose is not, clearly on the evidence last night and over a longer period, he's not the manager he once was. I think that, like, you've brought up several reasons there that I would use if I'm Daniel Levy this morning to say, listen, this guy's time is done. They're not within an arse's roar at the minute of the top four, and they're a club who clearly have those ambitions and way beyond it. And I think actually the way they're headed at the minute was 3 defeats in a row now in the Premier League for the first time since, I don't know that I hear last night in the commentary that it was the first time since the 80s, or certainly since for a long time anyway. That seems unlikely given that it's Spurs, but certainly for the first time in a long time. And even listening to Glenn Hoddle in the commentary on BT last night, he's saying, Tottenham are set up okay defensively. They were still get-at-able, but they're set up okay defensively. When they get the ball, they've absolutely no idea what to do with it. Like, that is unbelievably concerning if you're a team with the ambitions that they have. And I think that, like, a new manager comes in on and potentially, like, look at the Harry Kane thing. You want to get him back at the pitch. There's no question about that. Get him on winning penalties that really shouldn't be penalties. And, does a new manager come in and breathe fresh life into the career of Dele Alli? Like, he's somebody that's been totally forgotten about. I was watching some of the highlights, bizarrely, of the Marine game for a reason that I don't quite know, at some point during the week. And, like, you remember that Dele Alli exists and, like, in his prime is an unbelievable footballer, like, who's been sought after by some of the top clubs in Europe. Even take the case of Matt Doherty. Now, Matt Doherty is not going to swing the season, you don't really think, for Tottenham one way or the other, but, like, here's a player who's been brought in and the football is not suiting his game whatsoever. So look, I think that it's a bit of a runaway train at the minute, and Jose, in the words of Rio Ferdinand, is not at the wheel.
No, it doesn't look good at the moment. I still think this could be a little bit of a blip once everybody is fit and back and all that. But, like, I think when you talk about individuals in the squad, I'm sure Dele Alli has to take a huge bit of responsibility for what's happened over the last little while, where whatever he's been showing privately in training just hasn't been enough to impress Jose Mourinho to give him enough Premier League minutes. Like, as you say, that Marine game, Dele Alli made Carlos Vinicius look good on that particular evening, and I think that is probably the biggest statement of intent that you could talk about when it comes to Dele Alli on that night. I think he should be taking a bit of responsibility. I think Matt Doherty should be taking a bit of responsibility for his poor form. Like, these are professionals who've been around the block for a while. They are experienced, and they don't necessarily need a manager to take them under their wing and give them very direct instructions to ensure that they get good performances out of themselves. I'm not even talking about getting the best out of themselves, just getting good performances out of themselves. And we know that Jose Mourinho can be a little bit ruthless in that manner. It's tough love that he likes to show. We saw that in the documentary, and we've seen that at previous clubs. Unfortunately, it does seem that maybe football has moved in a way where tough love is less useful, and players respond worse to tough love, and players can find ways out of clubs, or they can push managers out of clubs if there's enough players who respond to it poorly. So you're right, there's enough signs to suggest that this is not going to end well at Tottenham Hotspur. I just think that come the start of next season, I think Jose will still be Spurs boss.
All right, interesting. We'll talk to Liam Twomey of The Athletic about it in a little bit, but also on this morning, worth letting our viewers and listeners know about the World Cup is reaching its final today.
It is World Cup final day, which is remarkable when you think about it, that it's a year 2021 and we've got the biggest game in football. We've got Gary Neville against Roy Keane in our World Cup of Pundits. We did a little bit of a teaser on Instagram to get a sense of how people are feeling before the actual poll, which is on our Twitter account at OTB AM. So give that a follow. Give us a vote on that. The Instagram results are suggesting that Roy Keane is hammering Gary Neville. And yes, it may be because there are a lot of people who follow us that are Irish, and maybe there's a little bit of patriotism coming through there. Claff, for example, commented on Instagram saying has to be Roy Keane. Sean Farrell says, come on, if you need a reason, you're not allowed on the internet ever again. Tom Webb says, Gary makes good points and observations. Roy just says they're not hard enough or good enough, and that's it. And I thought there'd be more people along Tom's way of thinking there voting for Gary Neville, and I thought this would be a little bit tighter, but not to be. Emmett Dignan then says, blunt and entertaining, even if he is just playing up to his reputation as a no-nonsense player. Neil Malloy says, Roy, he's not media PC. like the rest. And Padraig Gaffney says Roy honesty and doesn't care what people think of his honesty. And that seems to be the big theme coming through for people voting for Roy Keane this morning, the blunt nature of the man.
One brings like this intense, deep, hard analysis, bit annoying at times, but has changed the game of analysis. And then the other one is like a throwback to that kind of, listen, it's a simple game, don't overly complicate it. And he's carried through on a bit of charm, a bit of wit, a bit of cutting opinion, a bit of corkness.
Yeah, and I think we were having this conversation as well during the week about what do you want from your analyst? Do you want to be informed or do you want to be entertained? Now, I think there's a way to do both, and I think that Neville and Carragher certainly do both. But then you have someone like Roy Keane who turns the entertainment level up to 11. And then it's kind of hard to avoid the fact that we're all humans. And when we actually are put in that position, we're probably going to pick Roy Keane over everybody else when it comes down to it. Like, who is the one person you will hang around for after ads at 6:30 on a Sunday evening after a mediocre Premier League game? It's Roy Keane more than anybody else. And when you think about it, that is what makes a great pundit, because, I mean, Sky are trying to sell subscriptions. It is all about eyeballs. And that is why Roy Keane looks like he's going to coast home, not just edge past his former teammate Gary Neville, but it looks like he's going to coast home this morning and be crowned world champion of pundits.
Not the first excellent point you've made on the show this week, Owen, so fully in agreement with you on that. It is 20 to 8 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're live in association with Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We've so much coming up over the course of the day, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. Before all of that, Phil Egan is standing by. Good morning to you, Phil.
How are you doing, Adrian? How are you getting on?
José for the boot?
No. But we know how it ends, and it's not that long ago they were top of the league. Obviously, you remember when they went to Anfield mid-December, they were top of the league, that top of the table clash at Liverpool. Since then, hasn't gone too well. Obviously, last night's 1-0 defeat to Chelsea. 3 defeats in the space of 7 days in the league. First time in his managerial career, José Mourinho has lost back-to-back home league games, and it's just the manner of the defeat. They were so passive in the first half, bit better in the second half, but didn't really create too many chances. And I think one thing you always associate with José Mourinho teams is hard to beat, solid defence, but right now they don't have that. And his go-to guy in central defence, Eric Dyer, was the guy that gave away the penalty last night, fell on Timo Werner. So in terms of Chelsea, it's 2 wins and a draw under Thomas Tuchel, and he's changed things around. He's obviously gone 3 at the back. They're up to 6th place, just 4 points off the Champions League places. So if you're looking at that top 4 at the moment, wondering who could break into it, Chelsea would certainly be the team that you would think that could catch the likes of Leicester or Liverpool. It depends really, I suppose, what happens this weekend. Still plenty of games to go, but let's put a bit of perspective into who Chelsea have played in Tuchel's first 3 games. They've played Wolves, Burnley and a very out of form Tottenham without Harry Kane. But Jorginho's first half penalty, as I said, made 2 wins and a draw for Chelsea. And obviously something to watch out for today. Ireland head coach Andy Farrell is going to name his team for Sunday's Six Nations opener away to Wales. That game on Sunday kicks off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Josh van der Fleer, it looks like, is going to be named in the back row alongside Peter O'Mahony and CJ Stander. Jack Harty and Finlay Bealham, both Irish internationals, but won't be involved obviously in the Six Nations this weekend. Both play for Connacht tonight. Both will make their 150th appearances for the province when they face the Dragons in that rearranged Pro 14 game. And that one gets underway in Newport at 7:35. Rory McIlroy's 1 under par after his first round at the Phoenix Open. Started off with a double bogey and bogey, did recover, but he's 7 shots off the lead. American pair Matt Neesmith and Mark Hubbard share the lead on 8 under. Padraig Harrington is level par. Shane Lowry will resume on level par on day 2 of the Saudi International, which is the European Tour event this week. Graham McDowell's the defending champion there. Remember, he missed the cut last week, but he's 1 under par after 9 holes of his second round today. Cormac Sharvin has just moved to level par. Paul Dunne will start his second round from 3 over par. England's David Horsey continues to lead the way in 9 under. And looks like the Australian Tennis Open will go ahead as planned next Monday after a coronavirus scare. Over 500 players and tournament staff had to go into isolation because a hotel worker tested positive for COVID-19 earlier on this week in Melbourne. But tournament director Craig Tilley says that 495 have already tested negative. 12 more are waiting on the results. So looks like it'll be all systems go, and Monday it's going to be very strange watching it because there's going to be big crowds there in Melbourne.
Phil, you're a man who obsesses over his TV schedule for the weekend. Let's say in some hypothetical scenario there's a pandemic that hits the globe and Sky are only allowed to have one pundit in studio on analysis. It's Gary Neville or it's Roy Keane. Which way are you going?
Gary Neville.
Right.
Now, I want analysis. I don't want VAR analysis. I'm sick of that now. It depends. Like also as well, like I can see why Roy Keane is so popular because he entertains. As in, there was a while there where it just seemed for United matches he was in studio for every time they lost, and you know this was a former captain, a legend of the club, getting a chance to stick the boot into players. So what wouldn't be entertaining about that? But Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher together on Monday Night Football when they have time to analyse games and that's when I'm most entertained. But different strokes for different folks. Some people don't want that kind of analysis. They just want the entertainment. They want Roy Keane and Micah Richards bouncing off each other.
You used the bounce word there. I thought you were going with banter, Phil, so well done for avoiding that one.
Yeah. It's a word it's not in my vocab, that word.
Nobody is surprised to hear that Phil has gone for Gary Neville over Roy Keane. That's just the depth of analysis, Phil, that you bring to it. The what time has the Irish team been named at today? Midday.
Around midday, yeah.
Various things going on in the papers this morning. The Independent has the back three of Keenan, Larmour and Earls, which would mean that Lowe would miss out, but that's not roundly reflected elsewhere. That's their probable 15.
And it's a probable team in the Irish Times as well. So they've gone for Lowe instead of Larmour. The Irish Times are also pinning their hat on the fact that Billy Burns is going to be the out half on the bench. And the Indo have left it open. Burns / Byrne is what they've gone for on the bench. They're the only two differences. Like as mentioned earlier on, it looks like it's going to be, Mahoney, Van der Fleer, Stander, back row. That was maybe one of the question marks this week, whether or not it'd be Van der Fleer or maybe Will Connors. Will Connors is due to be on the bench. I should say both the Irish Independent and the Irish Times are saying these are both probable teams. Just because they've got some common names doesn't mean this is going to be the team at midday, but the papers do tend to have a very good record going into the weekend. So the one question really is who is going to be on the other wing opposite Keith Earls. It's either going to be Jordan Larmour or it is going to be James Lowe.
Okay, we'll see. I want to see Lowe there, given the bit of needle he had with Wales last time out. We'll talk to Alan Quinlan about that in just a little bit. Phil, good man. Thanks a million for that. Talk to you a bit later on. Phil Egan there with the very latest in the world of live sport and a bit of a heads up on that team as well. That'll be named, as you said, just after midday today. So that's all coming up a little bit later in the day, and plenty more besides as well between now and 10 a.m. for you this morning right here on OTB AM. We've Liam Twomey of the Athletic standing by to talk about that Chelsea Spurs game last night. We'll let you know what's going on across the back pages as well a little bit later in the day. Owen's been in conversation with Bernard Dunne. Plenty coming up there, including the relationship that young professional fighters have coming up through the ranks now with their management and promotions firms and the choices that they have to make in Ireland of 2021. And so we'll get Bernard's thoughts on that. Frank Greaney will be along in the week that the case in Kerry came up in relation to the 18-year-old who'd dropped a string of racist abuse into the Instagram account of Ian Wright, and he didn't pick up a criminal conviction out of that case this week. Frank Greaney, our courts correspondent, will bring us up to speed with exactly what it was that went on there and why that decision was come to a bit later this morning. Alan Quinlan looking ahead to the weekend of Six Nations Rugby at 9:15. We've got Cold Cuts again this week, and it's an absolute doozer for you. That's coming your way just after 9. We have a crappy quiz at 9:20, and then Brian O'Driscoll, his best bits from his conversation with Will last night on the show. That's all coming your way a little bit later in the day. And but now, delighted to say we are going to talk Chelsea Spurs, and Liam Twomey of The Athletic joins us on the line. Good morning to you, Liam.
Good morning.
We've just been debating the rights and wrongs of José's system last night. It wasn't pretty to look at.
No, it wasn't. I think Tottenham's contempt for the ball in the first half was quite startling, even by Mourinho's standards. And while in the second half, it did look like Chelsea were hanging on a little bit, particularly in the last 20 minutes. I I think a lot of people would probably say that Tottenham didn't deserve an equaliser for the way that they approached the game initially. I mean, it was always going to be a difficult one for them without Harry Kane, who clearly is a big part of their attacking system. But Chelsea's level of control shouldn't really happen at Tottenham Stadium the way that it did.
Is conversely Harry Kane being out the thing that keeps Jose Mourinho in a job for the next while? Like, he's fourth favourite in that market to get the sack, and everybody's assuming once Harry Kane comes back that everything gets fixed again, at least for a little while. Is that the thing that keeps Jose in a job for the next while?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, Kane and Son have been fantastic this year, haven't they? And they've kind of almost double-handedly justified the defensive strategy that Mourinho has taken, because they've made it work at the other end of the pitch. And judging by what Mourinho said after the game, Kane won't be out for too much longer. He might even be back for Tottenham's next match. So that will probably buy Mourinho a little bit more time. I think the other thing that's buying him a little bit more time is that there are empty stadiums. I think he was very lucky that Tottenham Stadium was empty last night, because I don't get the impression that Tottenham fans, particularly not the ones I was seeing on social media, would have tolerated that kind of first half performance in particular against their bitter rivals if they'd been there in person. So yeah, that could buy him a little bit of time, but there's no doubt he's under pressure now.
Yeah, like, I mean, when you look at it, you step back and take a look at the big picture. 6 last season, they're well off the top 4 at the minute. They've been beaten by teams at all ends of the season. They've 3 losses on the bounce. Is there a point when you start to look at some of those players, like you mentioned Harry Kane and Son, and there are others in there as well? He's failing to get the best out of Matt Doherty. That there was something of a deal about made, obviously, having been signed in the close season. At what point do some of those players start to look at it, Liam, and think, I'm actually, if the longer Jose is here, the less likely it is that I am?
Yeah, I think there are quite a few senior players in that squad that have probably big decisions to make in the next year or two. I mean, someone like Toby Alderweireld has already been at Tottenham a lot longer than all of us expected, given that he seemed perennially in a contract standoff. And Harry Kane has made noises on numerous occasions about wanting to compete for the biggest trophies. And it looks like Tottenham are heading away from that, not towards it. I mean, you could argue they had a bigger choice to make before they sacked Pochettino and appointed Mourinho, of whether they wanted to refresh this squad or change the manager. And they, of course, chose to change Pochettino for Mourinho, because that's always cheaper than selling a load of players and replacing them. But they do look a slightly tired and stale team now. Certainly don't look like they're anywhere near as dynamic as they were at the peak of their cycle under Poch. So Tottenham have some bigger picture questions to answer, I think. Chelsea won't really worry about that, because they're finally getting some momentum back.
Can I just ask you one more on Tottenham, and we move on to Chelsea after that? Listening to Glenn Hoddle even at the commentary last night, and he's talking about how Tottenham are set up and how the system's all about defending effectively, and they've forgotten what to do, I think might have been his exact words, once they get the ball, which is a remarkable indictment. Even when they went behind remarkably, they were playing very deep. So is there a sense that, like, once Harry Kane comes back, that all gets fixed? Because, like, even when you look at it last night, poor Vinicius up front was really not seeing very much of the ball at any point. Does that fix it in your view, Liam? Do we suddenly start to see a slightly different style? Would we have seen a different style, I suppose, from Spurs last night if he was there, and how all that plays out?
I don't think we would have seen a markedly different style, judging by the way Tottenham have approached other big games this season. I just think it would have worked better, because Harry Kane has adapted his game almost to make a style like this a little bit more possible for Mourinho over the last year or two. He's become very, very good at dropping deep, basically serving as the team's de facto number 10, getting the ball on the half turn and playing those brilliant passes in behind to Son. And that was clearly the link that they were missing last night, because they were getting the ball out against Chelsea, not really doing a great job of beating Chelsea's press, but that was partly because they didn't have anyone like Kane who could pick that pass. sometimes with not much space in which to do it. So I think it probably will work better once Kane is back, and it probably would have worked better against Chelsea last night with Kane there. They might have even got an equaliser, but overall you have to think, is a style like that really viable in a game like that? I mean, Tottenham needed to win as well. They shouldn't have been playing for a draw. You know, both of these teams are trying to chase top 4 spots, and you know, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, and even Leicester, given the way they're playing, all look pretty good for a top 4 finish right now. So Chelsea and Spurs are under pressure. They should have been looking to win that game.
Liam, you mentioned Tottenham's allergy to possession last night. Chelsea have certainly shown the opposite over the first few games of Thomas Tuchel's reign. The big challenge that has presented itself early is turning that possession into lots of chances. How close did they come to realising that last night?
Yeah, I think Tuchel's first priority on taking this job has been to establish control for this team in a way that was lacking really in the final weeks under Frank Lampard, and he's restored the Jorginho Kovacic axis in midfield, which kind of changes the whole identity of this team really. And Chelsea have done a very good job of controlling games against very defensive-minded opponents in these first 3 games with Tuchel. The one thing that's been missing has been the consistent chance creation. And I think they had dangerous moments last night. I think there were a lot of moments against Tottenham where they put Tottenham into difficulty defensively, but the final pass was just really badly lacking, or the final decision in the final third was just not accurate enough, or just plain wrong. And I think that's partly the players trying to get used to what Tuchel is asking them to do, get used to this new tactical framework. But it's also because I think Chelsea have a lot of slightly younger players in the final third, and you probably have to live with some bad decisions and a lack of ruthlessness at times as part of that as well. So broadly, I think there are good signs under Tuchel in terms of the process of what they're doing. But then they're not quite as ruthless as you would like them to be just yet, and it made for quite a nervy finish for them against Tottenham.
And there are a wealth of options for them when it comes to these players in creative positions. It does seem that Mason Mount has put his hand up highest in the first couple of games as a player who is going to play in roughly a number 10 position. I saw him describe his position last night as a false 9 dropping into a 10. Is there a possibility he plays as a singular number 10 going forward for Chelsea?
Yeah, he might start getting the reputation as Thomas Tuchel's son now. Yeah, he's certainly capable of doing that. I think he's shown in the last 2 games in particular, the 2 that he started, a real talent for finding space between the defensive lines, even of very deep-lying opponents, which is not an easy thing to do. And then playing on the half-turn when he's getting those passes from Jorginho and Kovacic, and really setting the table for Chelsea to trouble teams in the final third. He's kind of one of the people that you come back to when you're talking about decision making at times, not being absolutely perfect, but he is only 22 and he's still developing as a player as well. I'd say the one thing that maybe could be an obstacle to him being the kind of undisputed number 10 of this team is that, you have Kai Havertz, who Chelsea have a massive investment in at a club level, and was a significant reason for the coaching change in the end, his form this season. You also have Hakim Ziyech, who, in this system at least, makes more sense as an attacking midfield creator rather than one of the wide players. So there are plenty of options, and I think Tuchel's reputation suggests that he won't go with any one player in every single game. But what is clear is that Mount has put himself in position with his early performances to make himself important to Tuchel, just as he was to Lampard.
The price tag of Havertz is a really interesting point to bring up. And I do wonder, and you might be able to shed some light on this, if there is this underlying pressure on the Chelsea manager to reflect the price tag with a few extra minutes here and there. We've spent so much money, so therefore we must play the guy. And also on top of that, I wonder, does that give a different sort of pressure to their recruitment strategy this summer. You're going to have someone like Erling Haaland being linked with every club over the next few months. It makes sense for Manchester City to go into the transfer market for him. And it also kind of makes sense for Chelsea to be interested in him, given the lack of goals or the problems they've had. The issue, though, is that they've spent a hell of a lot of money already on attacking players. Will that come into their thinking this summer if they want to get into the mix for Erling Haaland?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, on the price tag front, I mean, that's certainly a factor in the way that the club think about Havertz and the decisions they make and the way they talk to the coach. But that's not just Havertz, that's any player that they've spent an awful lot of money in, awful lot of money on. I mean, Kepa is a similar issue where we, as part of the big story we ran on Frank Lampard sacking, you know, one of the details was he kind of gave up on Kepa towards the end of last season and was told by the club, oh, you should put an arm around him, work with him, try and get the best out of him. Because when you pay that much for a player, there is a commitment at the club level to give them absolutely every chance, even when it's clear that they're not living up to expectations. So that's the kind of situation. Obviously, Havertz is not a Kepa situation. He's not been at Chelsea very long, but he has that kind of investment at club level. In terms of Haaland, yeah, he does make sense as a target primarily because he's so damn good. He's the best number 9. You know, he could be the best number 9 of his generation based on what he's done early in his career. And I think even with the attacking weapons that Chelsea already have, I think, you know, Timo Werner's a lot better than he's shown. I think Tammy Abraham has a lot of room to grow as a player. If you have a chance to get a player like Erling Haaland, I think you have to go for it. Because if you don't get him, one of your rivals will, and he could define the next 10 years of European football. So you just kind of try and get a player like that and worry about the rest later. But he will have his pick, whether he leaves Dortmund this summer or the following summer when his release clause actually kicks in. He will have his pick of elite European clubs, I'm sure.
Coaching, and there is always going to be talk again once Thomas Tuchel's time is up at Chelsea about Lampard perhaps coming back as a coach, not necessarily as manager at the club. Do you think that the relationship between the club and their club legends has changed as a result of the Lampard reign?
It's an interesting question. I don't think you can ever say never with Chelsea, purely because I didn't think Mourinho would come back. It seemed like those relationships were too strained. But time heals all wounds, and it might take a few years. What I can say with relative certainty or relative confidence is that I don't think a manager as unproven as Lampard was, or as inexperienced as Lampard was, will get the job again now. Because those were such unique circumstances at Chelsea with the transfer ban, Eden Hazard leaving. They were at a unique point where they weren't quite as attractive to proven coaches as they usually are. And that was a big part of the reason why Lampard ended up rising to the top of the list. I think if Lampard wants the job again, and we'll see whether he does or not, he will have to go away and prove himself elsewhere now, and kind of establish that body of work that Thomas Tuchel has, you know, and every other name who was linked with this job to replace him. So I don't think it rules out a club legend. I don't necessarily get the sense that club legends have been put off the Chelsea job. I think it's still a very attractive job in lots of ways. It's just a very difficult job, politically as well as the sporting challenge. But I'm sure whether it was, you know, John Terry or Petr Cech or Didier Drogba or any of the names from Chelsea's golden era, I'm sure if they had those kind of coaching ambitions, Chelsea would be a uniquely attractive job to them in the way that it was to Lampard.
I did also mean to ask you, Liam, about Lampard's parting gift to you personally, a fair, blunt appraisal of your coverage of him as Chelsea manager. What was the fallout to that like as a writer? Did you find that your Chelsea fan followers were all on Lampard's side? Did you feel you had good backup at that point, given things weren't going so well for Lampard? What were those few days like in the aftermath of that press conference?
To be honest, I didn't enjoy the few days. Not because, you know, I didn't take what Lampard said personally. It wasn't an issue for me at all. The only thing that I didn't enjoy was just how big an issue everyone else made of it. I think if it had happened in a non-televised section of the press conference, most people wouldn't have even heard about it, because I wouldn't have made a big deal out of it. I don't think anyone at Chelsea would have said anything. It was just one of those surreal situations, and the fact then that Lampard, got sacked only a few days later, and he was who he was at Chelsea, it just made for about a week or two of pretty bad toxicity on Chelsea Twitter. It can get that way sometimes, but it was not the best few days, and it certainly wasn't a story that I enjoyed covering, because you don't want to cover a club sacking their greatest ever player. But we were reporting the situation as it was, and Lampard was under pressure, and that was it really. So it's not something that lingers with me. I didn't have an issue with it at the time. I don't now. It's just one of those times where you maybe switch off Twitter for a little while and wait for it all to die down.
That's never a bad idea. Was there ever any contact afterwards, Liam, from Frank Lampard himself or the club, or was that just it?
No. Like I said, it wasn't an issue. We had a professional disagreement in a press conference, which people happened to see. I wasn't expecting anything, and there's been no contact.
Can I ask you one last question, because you've seen them up close and personal? On the bank of evidence from what you've seen from Frank Lampard, we've been discussing it on the show a little bit over the last couple of weeks. What level is he, do you think? Like, where will he find his level?
It's hard to say, because he'd had so little time coaching before he got the Chelsea job, and I think he did some good things in the Chelsea job beyond giving the young players a chance. I think he had some pretty good tactical moments last year and some pretty good tactical wins. The problem was, once things started to go wrong, because he didn't have that track record, there was nothing to convince the people above him that he was going to turn it around. So I think with time, he certainly strikes me as the type of character that can be a big success in coaching, because the same things that turned him into the greatest player in Chelsea's history, that drive and dedication, that intelligence, and that desire to improve every day and kind of analyze your own weaknesses, I think will serve him really well in coaching. Those are the things that tend to separate the best coaches, or the ones that mature into the best coaches over time. It just might take a few years, and I think a big part of the success of coaching as well is picking the right jobs at the right times. And he couldn't turn down the Chelsea job when he got offered it. But this next job is probably quite important to him in terms of making sure he comes in and works with the right owner in the right environment, where he knows he's going to get a little bit of time to build something. And I'm sure he will do that. I'm sure he will be patient and kind of assess his options. But I think as long as he does do those things, I don't see any reason why he can't prove himself to be a high-level coach. And I'm sure, given the way his experience at Chelsea panned out, he'll have more of a burning desire than ever to prove himself so, because that's just the way Lampard works.
Yeah, we'll watch it with interest. Liam, thanks a million for taking the call.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, Liam Twomey of The Athletic there, joining us on the line to discuss that game last night. Plenty of comments coming in on Paddy Dunne here, saying that if Chelsea had a decent striker, they'd have mullered Spurs. Tuchel has instilled some belief. Very important to take 3 points off those London rivals, he says. Somebody called Anyone But Liverpool on YouTube saying that Mourinho needed Dele Alli last night. A huge waste of talent sitting in the bench. Sometimes José's management is something to question. There's any doubt about that at all. Stephen Fraser, the clock is ticking for José. He'll be back on Sky Sports in no time. Hopefully Son gets snapped up by United. You would definitely think that he will be one of maybe the leading light, along with Kane, to be eyeing a move elsewhere. And FA says finally here, Kane is wasting his time at Spurs, and Thomas Tuchel will win the Champions League, FA Cup, and qualify for the Champions League. Win the Premier League, I'm presuming, is what FA meant there. I'm not sure about that. We shall see. But certainly Tottenham are going to be one of the most interesting stories to watch, I think, over the next few weeks. And the idea of Harry Kane being a lifelong Spurs man on, you having that?
I think that's probably a possibility for sure. I think, first of all, that texter probably is talking about the Champions League. They play Atletico Madrid at the end of this month, and obviously it's a very optimistic Chelsea supporter. I can see Kane staying at Spurs for a little bit longer, all right. I think Son probably doesn't. He's obviously signed in. Kane has got much more of a maybe a deeper connection to Spurs. Like, I don't know. He's always spoken glowingly about the club and how much he wants to stay. So if you had to pick one who's more likely to stay, it's obviously going to be Kane. Just one other thing about one of those texters said as well, just about if Chelsea had a decent striker, they would have mullered Tottenham last night. I think that they will get into a position where they are going to start mullering teams very shortly. I do think Timo Werner could be that guy. I think that there have been signs this season that he can do it, and I think that he will maybe not surprise people next season, because I think everybody knows he's got the talent. But I think maybe people will be surprised by how good he's going to be next season and how productive he's going to be next season. I expect big things from him, and I think that, as that commenter said, they will start mullering teams very, very shortly.
Yeah, he gets in all the right positions, Owen. Is that the cliche that we're supposed to use in this position? And like, once he stops knocking it over the bar from about 3 yards out, that's when Chelsea are going to see the fruits.
And he's also really fast as well. He's fast and he's getting in the right positions, the two surefire ways to get yourself into the Golden Boot race.
I'm told that the exit polls from the World Cup final have given us a false impression that it's actually much closer than we thought. Gary Neville versus Roy Keane, as you can see, it is absolutely nailed on, neck and neck. So jump on to @OffTheBall AM and cast your vote as to who is your favourite pundit in our World Cup of Pundits this week. It'll close off later today, and we shall crown either Gary Neville or Roy Keane the off-the-ball pundit of a generation. Let's put that title on it. Why not? It's 8:10 on this Friday morning. We have so much more to come over the next while. We'll be talking rugby with Alan Quinlan and plenty more as well besides, but we're back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball.
Now here our City. Here is Gabriel Jesus, spins and scores. One chance, one finish, and one equaliser for Manchester City. It's City 1, Liverpool 1.
Liverpool and Manchester City renew rivalries this Sunday at Anfield. We'll have full live match commentary for you on a busy off the ball. Damien Delaney will join Nathan Murphy for the 4:30 kick-off. And before that, it's Brian Kerr with Stephen Doyle as Leicester visit Wolves. Ireland kick off their SixNations campaign in Wales, and we'll have all the updates, plus the usual paper review. It's all to look forward to on Sundays Off the Ball, live from 1 until 7.
Off the ball. Don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Calling all builders, joiners, plasterers and dryliners. Need advice on the right materials for the job? Consider it done. You need them on site and in your hand. Consider it done. You want access to over 10,000 products from the leading construction brands without having to start up the van. Consider it done. There's another way of doing things. E-Tag. We talk with you to solve your problem and deliver what you need directly onto site. No second guessing, no seconds wasted. Click etag.ie.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, study the form with our Racing Post Spotlight before watching the action with free live streaming on all UK and Irish horse races. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
All right, it's nearly 8:15 on this Friday morning. Here's a little bit of a flavour of what's going on across otbsports.com this morning and some of the back pages. Brian O'Driscoll talking about Paul O'Connell's phone call to tell him to stop talking about the Ireland tactics during the World Cup was one of the lead stories there from his chat with Will last night, as well as saying that his commentary on Owen and Ger's chat during the week, saying that the lads were calling the Welsh rubbish. He's saying, I'm sure the Irish camp won't like it. Kevin Doyle and Aaron Connolly and plenty more besides as well up there. And some of the highlights from the back pages this morning are some great photographs of José Mourinho drying himself off with an enormous towel on a very wet night in London last night as Tottenham got beaten. There's also various takes on what the Irish team is going to be when it gets named after midday today, depending on which of the newspapers you read. And also Eddie Jones, having previously given Scotland loads of compliments, has now jumped the ship, and he's over on the other side saying that the pressure is going to be far too much for the Scotland team. So Eddie Jones ramping it up as he always tends to do at this point as we head into the Six Nations. We'll talk about all of that with Alan Quinlan in just a little bit. Do keep your comments coming in and keep your votes coming in as well on our World Cup Pundits poll this morning. But it's 8:15, and earlier in the week, Owen was in conversation with Bernard Dunne, the High Performance Director of the IABA, as he launched the Indeed Career Coach Programme to support Irish amateur athletes. Take a look.
Okay, so Indeed has teamed up with the Olympic Federation to launch the Indeed Career Coach Programme, which is aiming to help athletes plan for life beyond sport. The programme has been developed with the support of the Olympic Federation of Ireland, the Sport Ireland Institute, and High Performance Director of the IABA, Bernard Dunne, who you can see on screen right now. Bernard, how are you getting on?
I'm great. How are you keeping?
Very well, thanks. So talk to us about this programme. How do you become a career coach? What is the Indeed Career Coach, and what outlets are you hoping to provide to athletes?
Well, I suppose it's not about becoming a career coach. It's about giving, helping our athletes develop the tools that will help them transition from being solely an athlete to being somebody who's engaged, I suppose, in the workplace and who's functional, I suppose, in the non-sporting world. How it initially would have came about was my own transition from sport into, let's say, the second life. I boxed from the age of 5 until the age of 30, and really that's all I ever did. And I suppose I solely identified as Bernard Dunne, the boxer. I think the general public would have identified me as Bernard Dunne, the boxer. And that's a great thing, and I'm proud of that. But that can also, put shackles on how you develop yourself then after you've left sport, because it can leave a very big void when you've stepped away. I used to know what I was doing 24/7, 365 when I was an athlete. You're very focused, you're very planned, and you're single-minded in your pursuit of trying to achieve excellence in your sport. When that's gone, and that regime is gone, that structure around what you're doing is gone, you can feel lost. And I suppose initially when I retired from sport, and it was my choice to retire, often athletes can, forced to retire through injury or just through no fault of their own. And that brings other challenges. But when I retired, it was great. I was enjoying life. I didn't have to watch my weight. I didn't have to, be careful around, staying up late. I was able to do what I wanted when I wanted. But that wore off very quickly after about 2 months, and it became, okay, what else am I going to do with myself? And it was only then that I started to think that I had no other value. I had nothing else that I could contribute to the world. And that was a strange feeling to have. And I actually came very close to going back to fighting. I thought I'd left behind the one thing I could actually do in life, the one skill that I actually had. I had that conversation with my wife, with my dad, and I never went back boxing, so that could tell you what they thought about the whole conversation. But it was a great conversation to have, because it made me realize that I needed to give myself an opportunity to feel and see what other things were like. And that comes from trying things. That comes from putting yourself out there and not being afraid to fail, really. It's a fear of failure, a fear of being exposed at something, because you've left behind something that you excelled at. Now all of a sudden you're going to something new and something different. And what career coaches around is actually helping them in that transition whilst they're already an athlete. So helping them realize that some of the skills and tools that they have are so relative to the working life, to the second life, if you will. And that's what I call it. It's the second life, because it's sport only lasts for a short period of time, and you got to realize and prepare for the next life.
What sort of things did you try after retirement? Did you say that you tried a lot of things and maybe some things didn't go so well? What's the weirdest thing you tried perhaps after your professional career?
Jesus. I Actually, picking up the Irish language was probably one of them.
Right.
I failed Irish in school. Now I'd speak the language every day now. I raised my kids through the language, but it would have been one of the strangest things I would have went after. Writing a TV show, never thought I'd write one of those. Working with the Dublin football team, and now high performance director of our #1 Olympic sport, our most successful sport. Did I see myself doing this when I retired over 10 years ago? No, I didn't. And I actually deliberately took a complete break from boxing because I had done it for 25 years. You're legally allowed to participate from the age of 11. But I was I was in the gym from the age of 5. So I had a bit of a head start on most of their athletes when I got to the age of 11 because my dad was my coach. But come here, the one thing I would say was getting out there and giving myself the opportunity to see if I wanted to do something was the most important thing. And not having that fear of doing something. I remember, I was actually just telling the story earlier on to Amy. I remember sitting outside college for the very first time when I retired from boxing. And I was going into college and I was parked the car and I was thinking, what am I doing? Are you crazy going in here? People are going to be looking at you and thinking, that's Bernard on the boxer. What's he doing in here? And I felt like I didn't belong. And I actually started the car and put it into reverse. And I was about to go home and just something told me, you know what, give it an opportunity, give it a chance. You'll find out one of two things when you do that. One is, you like it and you want to do it. Or two is, I don't like it, I don't want to do it. But you have to give yourself that opportunity. And that, I suppose that's the biggest message I'd give to anybody who goes through that transition and is struggling, is to give yourself that opportunity to try something different and to be something different.
What do you think inspired you to not put the car into reverse at that moment?
Oh. I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew I needed to challenge myself. I didn't have a challenge in my life at that stage. I knew I needed something to stimulate my brain, to give me some structure, and to give me a new direction. So I knew it was the right thing to do.
And it's never a bad decision.
But there was something inside me saying, don't do it. That second little, that little voice that we all have in our head that tells us not to do something, for fear of being exposed or being put into something that you're uncomfortable with. I got comfortable with that uncomfortableness, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the really interesting thing when you talk about this program and how we talk about athletes who are either performing at the top of their game on an amateur level or are professional athletes, that most of us can't understand how someone like you, for example, can possibly sit in that car and not want to go into college, which so many people would see as a much simpler task than winning a world title, for example. It is, by fact, a much simpler task. You would probably make that point. How do you actually manage to communicate that to people then, that actually you do need to change how you're viewing these things, that the challenge of, say, academics could be a much bigger challenge for certain people than the actual actions of being an elite athlete on a day-to-day basis?
But if you look at what athletes and any sport, and this is across any sport, you look at what they do in their daily lives, it's so transferable to education, to the working life. The ability to work as part of a team, the ability to work on your own, the ability to take instructions, the ability to create a plan, implement a plan, and then review the plan. All these things are something that are carried out on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis when you're an athlete performing and competing at the highest level. So all these things are so transferable across into the working world. And also you look at just general, clubs, they're teaching kids discipline, respect, and again, the ability to work as part of a team and on your own, the ability to take instruction, the ability to listen. All these, like, sport is so valuable in educating kids and giving them skills that are good for going to school and are good for going into the workplace.
And this is a conversation we've actually been having on the show quite a bit over the last few weeks. We've been talking about the future of sport in Ireland and how important physical education is. And it's that exact point, that it isn't just about the how many medals are you going to win if you're cultivated in the right way. It is about what sort of values are you actually going to learn for life? What sort of habits can you pick up as a child that will stick to you for life?
Yeah, but like, we're not just, what we don't want to just do within our program is create athletes, and then when they finish their career, that's it, we cut them off. What we want to do is create functioning people, people who have a future, people who can go in and value themselves in any environment that they put themselves in. And whether that's through doing, online courses, whether that's through having lecturers come in, whether that's through attending a college or getting work experience, we want to help our athletes develop and grow as people.
When you went into the Dublin setup, did they have this sort of thing nailed? Because this is the thing that we often hear about the Dublin campus, that Jim Gavin certainly really pushed this idea that you had to have your family life and your professional life. They were really important for you to succeed as a Dublin footballer. Did that strike you immediately when you went in with that camp?
Jim, I haven't worked with him for 7 years with the senior squad. It was an evolving process, and Jim put his mark on it over time with the team that he had around him. He had valuable supports, and he placed great importance and value on those supports. He allowed them to do their own job, and he had trust in the experts he had around him. I think the GAA as a whole generally tend to do that in terms of sport, college, work, and being able to combine. And there is a place for all three to work side by side, even in a high performance environment like this. Give it that there is moments in sport where it does become very intense, and people think that having to study a course online or whatnot is a distraction for the worse. But actually, it helps occupy the mind. It stops you actually burning yourself out and overthinking your sport. And it helps you develop skills separately from whether it's boxing or GAA or soccer. It helps you develop skills that you wouldn't normally develop because you'd be solely focused on your sport. And those skills may actually benefit your sport.
This isn't then about necessarily removing the tunnel vision. It's about complementing that tunnel vision is kind of what I'm getting.
100%. It's about getting a balance. It's about getting a balance. Ultimately, athletes want to achieve success, but it's getting to think more about the process that backs that success up. And that process is the important piece. And if we can stop them focusing on just looking at winning gold medals and actually start again to look at the process and what can help build that success, I think that would be vitally important to athletes going forward in terms of creating that success.
And that's a really interesting point to pick up on when we talk about your role as high performance director at Irish Boxing. This obsession that everybody outside of the high performance unit has with medals. I presume inside that, of course, is an amazing end product, but it can't be your goal day to day.
No, we don't speak around medals here. We speak around, we speak about the process. We speak around what we're going after, where our focus is at. Like, our focus isn't on winning gold medals. That's a product of what we do. On a daily basis, we look to improve. We control what we can control in this environment. I know we're going through a terrible time for everybody. And we're in a very privileged position that we're able to still train, we're able to still compete. And they're the piece that we can control. We can control how we prepare and how we get ready, and where our mindset is at, what we focus on. They're things that we can't control. And we work on those on a daily basis.
Was that a culture shift when you came in, or was that already there before you took up the role of director?
It was, it's different. Yeah, it's different. We had, I suppose, a bit of a disjointed system when I came in. We had the fallout from Rio. and all that came along with that. And then we had a review and we agreed a way forward, and this is where we are now. It's still an evolving process. I suppose my view is looking out towards 2028 and actually how we can actually look further down the pathway and impact on those athletes with this career coach program. And actually, at a younger age group, it's a lot more easier to develop that culture of not solely focusing on your sport, but actually realizing that having outlets helps you actually perform better, having other facets to your life.
What would you consider then to be success over these next few years? If it's not going to be medals, do you have something to quantify and use to measure your success as a high performance director?
Ultimately, it's high performance. The outside world judges it on medals. What we judge it on is actually the program, the structure we have around the program, and how our athletes are developing. And it's that consistency of performance and the number of athletes that we can actually transition through this program to, whether it's into a coaching position or whether it's into, we get them into education. Like we have athletes who are applying for sports grants, who are applying for college. I was helping an athlete yesterday with a CAO piece, and it's just, they're the pieces that help. Investing in the people. They're the bits that will help ultimately achieve success.
How are you fixed for Tokyo then? What is the story? I presume you have to operate with full steam ahead. This thing is going to happen mentality.
We've full focus on preparing here in the gym, being ready when the opportunity arises to go back to the Olympic qualifier. I know the qualifier got cancelled last Friday. Mm-hmm. So we're aware that we're not going to London now to resume the first qualification tournament, but we can't control that, so we don't worry about it. We await the information from the Boxing Task Force and the IOC, and when that information comes in, we'll start to focus on what we need to do to be ready for that tournament. The Olympic Games, I believe, will happen. It's a lot easier for that to take place. But otherwise, it's full focus on training.
What is training at the moment for those who aren't qualified? Is it in full camp despite the maybe lack of uncertainty about when events might actually happen?
It's full camp. We're full training. Guys were on track this morning in the National Indoor Arena. They were doing, I think they were doing 3 800s this morning, which is it's a lot more enjoyable to watch than it is to do.
What does that involve?
It involves running hard for 800 meters. Yeah. You're trying to get it under a certain time, and each guy has their own. Each athlete has their own set time that they're trying to break.
So it's 800 meters, break for a couple of seconds, 800 meters, break, 800 meters. And how long is the break?
Not long enough.
And who is outperforming the rest at the moment without giving? You can give a name away when it's for positive reasons.
You're trying to get me into trouble here now. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me into trouble. It's do you know what? They've all got their own individual pieces that they like. Sure. That they work on. Our bigger guys obviously wouldn't be as mobile as some of our smaller athletes. You have the likes of Kelly Harrington, Aidan Walsh. Aidan Walsh is a bit like I think he's a bit of a greyhound inside of him. He's probably the fastest runner and consistently fast runner that I've seen. It could be a cross country runner. It could be anything he wants. To be fair, he's got great ability, both in the ring and outside of it. So we've a great bunch at the moment, and given everything that's going on, they're in a really good place, and that's important that we take care of our guys, and that we look after them.
Can I ask you then, in an overall sense of where Irish boxing is at, Bernard, about that balance between the amateur ranks and the elite boxers and professional boxing at the moment? Where is that scale at the moment? Are you finding it easier for boxers to stay in the Irish elite system, or are you really feeling that you're clinging on to them to try and stop them going pro at the moment?
It's the big challenge, it's not really with this group. It's, so clubs are closed down, so athletes are starting to, look at it, there's been no boxing for the last 12 months nationally. They barely have access to gyms, and they're looking. It's hard for young amateur athletes to look at it and say, like, where's the future for me? You know, when are the clubs going to open back up? When am I going to be able to start competing on a national level? When am I going to start going into tournaments? And when am I going to get the opportunity to go to a European juniors or a European youths or a world youths or, you know, under 22 competition? You know, and those athletes are looking and you're saying, okay, professional boxing is ongoing, albeit at a limited level, but they're seeing it on TV. And it's hard to stop those athletes jumping over, you know, because they don't have that outlet at the moment. And it's hugely challenging. And I know the government is trying to do what it can to protect people in the corner of the world. And that's extremely difficult. But I think we need to get a balance there, especially for young people. I think sport is a great way of not just keeping you physically fit, but your mental health is hugely important in all of this as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, the fact that there's actually an outlet to partake in your sport at the moment. I mean, like, it comes down to that quite often, I'd imagine, as a young boxer. Just one other thing I wanted to ask you about, just from that standpoint of the young professionals that are operating in Ireland at the moment. I know you haven't seen Monday night's Panorama documentary yet, but Barry McGuigan was one of the big figures who came on to speak about this, and he spoke about how he's losing a lot of fighters to MTK. Basically, they're being undercut. Would that concern you if you were a young boxer at the moment, the fact that the options are narrowing with regards to picking your promotion or picking the management team who are going to represent you, that it is narrowing towards MTK all the time?
I think it's hugely important that the people who are in power, those who run the world federations, be it amateur and professional, I think it's important that they set out very clear rules and regulations that protect and safeguard all our young athletes coming through, and our older athletes, the guys who are in professional, and that there's very clear guidance on making sure that what they earn is theirs, making sure that the careers are being well looked after.
How important is it that someone like Barry McGuigan is coming out and talking about this subject and talking about the associations to MTK?
Come here, I think with the Barry situation, I know he went through a recent court case himself. So, like Barry's was a phenomenal boxer himself, and actually was a huge inspiration to me. I remember having a photograph with him when I was 5 years of age, in a gym in Dublin, and saying I wanted to be like him someday and be champion of the world. It took me a little while to get there, but it's I'm a slow learner, let's put it that way. But you know, we've got some great individuals coming through in this country, in terms of athletes, in terms of performances, in terms of ability to become world champions, and we want to make sure that they're being guided in their careers in the right way.
Just a reminder that Indeed has teamed up with the Olympic Federation to launch the Indeed Career Coach Programme, which is aiming to help athletes to plan for life beyond sport. So the programme is being developed with the support of the Olympic Federation of Ireland, the Sport Ireland Institute, and High Performance Director of the IABA, Bernard Dunne, who you have been listening to for the last little while. Bernard, a pleasure as ever. Best of luck with the preparations for hopefully a number of Olympic qualifiers over the next little while. Thanks a million.
And please God, all be okay.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yeah, it is 20 to 9. That was Owen in conversation with Bernard Dunne from during the week. You can check out that full piece on OTBsports.com or on our YouTube channel as well, with plenty more still to come. But a bit of a flavour of what's happening on OTB Sports Radio across the day. From midday today, the Snap is back, and it's a Super Bowl special, obviously, with the weekend that's in it, and it's all brought to you in association with Now TV. Head along there at midday to check that out. 1:30 then, as you can see, the Paddy Power half hour, marking your card ahead of another weekend of interesting football ahead. From 3, live Friday night racing with Johnny there. At 4 o'clock, it's Team 33, the League of Ireland legend, the hot seat this week with Enda and Co. Be Pat Fenlon and Chris Watt will be the subject of OTB Gold from 6. And then, of course, as always, at 7 o'clock, it'll be Off the Ball live on the radio and on your streams and all the rest from 7 there. So that's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio across the day. We're going to be talking about the Ian Wright case in Kerry this week after these. Break after all. I tell you, I think we're going to talk to Frank Greaney now. Frank, good morning to you. It's
good morning,
the week.
Adrian.
I'm sure that people have paid attention to this during the week. An 18-year-old student, Patrick O'Brien from Tralee, avoiding criminal conviction despite pleading guilty to harassing Ian Wright after sending a string 20 of DMs on Instagram to Ian Wright in May of last year. The messages were described as crass, racist and threatening. They included racist names and terms of abuse, and Judge Eugene Waters applied the Probation Act to Patrick O'Brien as the case was finalised. And Frank is the Community Courts correspondent and has been paying attention to this. Much of the reaction, Frank, if we can begin with that, included from Ian Wright himself, has been that frustration that there wasn't maybe a harsher judgment. You might just tell us how Judge Waters arrived at that decision.
Yeah, I'm happy to. But I should point out that I wasn't actually physically in the courtroom. So a lot of the information that I'm receiving is probably what's before you and your viewers. So I suppose get an understanding of how we arrived at a decision. It's maybe worth, reminding your listeners how the sentencing process works. It's essentially a two-step process where the judge would have looked at all the facts of the case. He would have looked at how serious the case was, within the legislation that he is confined to. And then he would have looked at the offender. And I suppose that's how he arrived at his decision, because he's not just looking at the crime itself. And what this young man did, Patrick O'Brien, is deplorable. It's absolutely disgraceful. The content of the messages, I don't think is worth repeating on air today. He would have looked at the crime. He would have also looked at the other circumstances of the case. He would have looked specifically at the offender, Patrick O'Brien, an 18-year-old man who came before him without any other previous convictions. He has a clean criminal record. He would have looked at his remorse. He considered his remorse to be genuine. He would have also looked at how the victim in this case, Ian Wright, reacted and has been affected by the case. Ian Wright forgave this man. Patrick O'Brien apologised to Ian Wright. The judge considered it to be a genuine apology, and Ian Wright accepted it as genuine and forgave him. Ian Wright did outline to the court through his victim impact statement how he's been affected by this. He said he's been affected by racism throughout his entire career. But he did have the humility and understanding of where Patrick O'Brien was coming from to forgive him. And the judge would have taken that into consideration as well. What Patrick O'Brien did is absolutely not acceptable. From my own personal point of view, what he did was despicable. Society as a whole, I think the reaction online, you can see everybody is absolutely disgusted by what he did and said to Ian Wright. The judge would have been constrained in how he constructed his sentence. He would have had to construct what he considered to be an appropriate sentence under the legislation, the offence that he was charged with and pleaded guilty to. One of the most important mitigating factors in any criminal case is an admission of guilt. The earlier that comes, the better for the offender. Patrick O'Brien put his hands up as soon as possible and pleaded guilty to the charge. The judge would have obviously taken that into consideration. He did spare him a criminal conviction by applying the Probation Act. That doesn't mean he gets off scot-free. Granted, he's not going to spend any time behind bars, but Patrick O'Brien will have to now engage with the probation services. He will have to address the offence that he has been convicted and admitted to. And there is a long road ahead for him, but he will, hopefully, by the end of it, have a better understanding of what he did.
Do we know what shape that will take, Frank? Is there any details on that in terms of addressing it and creating a deeper understanding for Patrick O'Brien and all of this?
That's entirely for the probation services to decide. It will be tailor fit for Patrick O'Brien in this case. I do know he has donated some money to a charitable organisation, a campaign group against racism, €500 from his own pocket, is what I've heard. You can't buy yourself out of these things. I've seen a lot of talk on social media about how Patrick O'Brien has supposedly bought himself out of this. That's not the case. That's too simplistic a view. The judge would have taken an awful lot of other things into consideration. First and foremost would have been Ian Wright's reaction. Again, he spoke about what Patrick O'Brien did, and it's ludicrous coming on the back of a game of FIFA. It's ludicrous to think that he reached out to Ian Wright and said what he said. It's deplorable. It cannot in any way be condoned. Ian Wright has experienced, as he said, racism throughout his career, and how humble for him to say that he forgives somebody like Patrick O'Brien. But there has to be consequences, and for a lot of people, the consequences, you know, I'm looking at the chat on social media, and for a lot of people, they're saying that the consequences should have been a custodial sentence. The judge would have looked at the punishment, and you have to remember that when he's constructing a sentence, it's not just about a punishment. It's about rehabilitating somebody like Patrick O'Brien. At 18 years of age, he would have asked himself the question, you know, is it in the interests of society as a whole to jail somebody like Patrick O'Brien, or is it more worthwhile to get him to engage with the probation services, to address the crime that he has committed, to address the racism that he spoke to Ian Wright about, those offensive remarks? Again, it's not worth repeating them. They're absolutely deplorable. Some of the things that he said to Ian Wright, he will certainly have to address those with probation services. The judge would have considered all of that, and he felt when he handed down his sentence earlier this week that it would be in the best interests of Patrick O'Brien, the best interests in society as a whole, and indeed the best interests for Ian Wright, for Patrick O'Brien to engage with the probation services and to address the offence that he did, with a view to obviously getting to the nub of the issue, that being the racist remarks that he made to Ian Wright online.
And when you look at you almost might have a sense of Ian Wright from a statement afterwards yesterday in relation to the verdict and how disappointed he was with it, that maybe he regretted parts of his victim impact statement indeed. Is there any possibility, Frank, do you know, in terms of an appeal from the DPP, likelihood or technically possible?
Technically possible, yes. Likelihood, it's too soon to tell. I can't speak for the DPP, but there is an avenue of appeal for the Director of Public Prosecutions if she feels that the sentence handed down to an offender, and I'm speaking in general terms here, if the DPP feels that a sentence handed down is unduly lenient, then there is an avenue of appeal. They can bring an appeal before the Court of Appeal. But again, in relation to Patrick O'Brien, it's probably too early to tell if that's an avenue that DPP is going to take. And certainly I can't speak to whether or not that is going to actually happen.
And could I just ask you lastly, just in relation to the uniqueness of the case, how unique it is? Precedent seems unlikely, but is it possible that it might set a chain of other similar cases off in relation to social media particularly?
It's the charge that Patrick O'Brien pleaded guilty to is not that it's uncommon, but it's rare that you see it being brought before the courts. What we can take from the case against Patrick O'Brien is a positive, in the sense that we now know that Gardaí take these cases very seriously. There was an investigation, there was a prosecution. The Director of Public Prosecutions wouldn't have brought a case against Patrick O'Brien if she didn't feel there was a likelihood of getting it across the line. Now, again, he did plead guilty to this offence, but what it shows is that the state authorities responsible for prosecution in criminal cases do take these things very seriously. Patrick O'Brien is not spending any time behind bars for what he did, and we've explained why. But you take a look at what's happening online, you take a look at the kickback from the public in general, and one thing that we can take away from this case is that racism is not tolerated. It's not acceptable in any shape or form. For Patrick O'Brien to do what he did and think there would be no consequences for it is remarkable. We now know that there are consequences. People online mightn't be happy with the finished product, what happened with Patrick O'Brien and how the sentence was constructed. And again, there is an avenue of appeal for the DPP if she feels that it's worth pursuing. But we have to remember and take some positive strides out of the fact that the kickback online is remarkably positive in the sense that we know, and we should always have known, that racism in any shape or form is not acceptable. It is a criminal offence. It will be prosecuted.
Yeah, it does. In terms of the message it sends out, I'd take part of my lead from Ian Wright on that, I have to say. And it could have been louder and it could have been clearer, I think, was his sense of it. Frank, as always, a pleasure. Thanks a million for bringing us those details.
No problem, Adrian. Thank you. Frank
Greaney there, the Community Courts correspondent, with us to shed a bit of light on exactly what it was that went on behind the judgment in that case. We've plenty still to come. It's 10 to 9 on this Friday morning right here on OTB. And we'll bring you the results of our poll into the World Cup of Pundits in just a little bit. And we are going to talk rugby, though. Next, Alan is going to join us to get his teeth stuck into the Six Nations this weekend. First of all, let's hear from Brian O'Driscoll. He was with Will last night on Off the Ball, and they got talking about Byrne's best position.
Tadhg Beirne wouldn't be a bad shout at 6 as well, considering how much of a nuisance he is, as we well know, at ruck time.
Given Tadhg Beirne's form, he's been one of the real form players in Ireland for quite a while, the way he's been playing for Munster either side of Christmas. I'm guessing he has to get into the team, whether that's in the back row or the second row. Tadhg Beirne probably has to start here.
Yeah, but I think you have to look as well. International rugby is different to club rugby, and having a physical, big physical attributes to your game is a really important aspect, particularly playing in the second row. If you put him in the sixth position, you can play lots of variances of 6. You can have obviously a CJ, a big physical ball carrier, but you can have nuisances like Alan Quinlan was for years. You can have Tadhg, who's destructive at ruck time and kind of clever in biding his time, when to have involvements in the game. So it's really dependent on what way you want to play the game and whether you feel as though you need a little bit more grunt up front. And that's where maybe he kind of goes down the pecking order. If you're looking at size and beef, he's not the same ball carrier doesn't carry the same punch as someone like a Quinn Rue or a Ian Henderson or a James Ryan. But what he does do is he picks his moments, and he has 4 or 5 standout moments from a game, and that can be the difference between winning and losing test matches. He'll definitely be in the 23, that's for sure. It's just a matter of whether he'll be a starter, but I think his chances have opened up all the more now with the exclusion of Caelan Doris, and another chance for him to fit into a position, one of the 2 that he can play.
All right, that is Brian O'Driscoll on the makeup of what he thinks the Irish back row might be, and particularly a place for Tadhg Beirne there, and mentioning that Alan Quinlan is a nuisance, and he'll be standing by and joining us very shortly to look ahead to that game and to give us his own take on how he thinks that back row might stack up when the team is named a bit later on, where the strengths lie, and also we'll hopefully get time to get his combined, it was the only way we could end off the week really, is combined Ireland and Wales 11 and 15. I think, Alan Quinlan, you're standing by.
Morning, lads. How are you?
How are you getting on? A nuisance, Brian O'Driscoll described Jazz.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
I don't know, was he talking about during your playing days or afterwards?
On the field or off the field. It could have been both, but yeah, I think that bit of competitiveness at the breakdown and stuff is going to be a real key area at the weekend, and it's an area that we've come up second best in the last couple of seasons against Wales. You go back to, we haven't won there since 2013, and I think the likes of Tipuric, Faletau, Lydiot, who looks like he'll come back into the team, have caused us a lot of problems there. So it's a worry and it's a concern. And go back 2 years ago when Wales beat us in the Grand Slam convincingly. They controlled the game, frustrated Ireland, and really upset the flow and momentum, particularly in their attack, and caused them awful problems. And they were all a nuisance at the breakdown to Ireland. So that's an area that's really, really important on Sunday.
Yeah, so talk to us then about the back row, and there's every sort of combination, every name been mentioned for every different position, depending on what paper you read, and even listen to Brian, there's a different combination again. What's your view of the strongest back row? What is your strongest back row of available players now for this game?
They're all great players in their own right, and there's a lot of depth there. I think the back row that would have started would have been Stander at 6, Caelan Doris at 8, and Peter O'Mahony at 7, which, I suppose Josh van der Fleer, Will Connors, would be frustrated that there's a traditional 6 playing would have started at 7. He did so in November in the Autumn Nations, and I think his form has been really good, Peter O'Mahony, and there just seems to be a bit more spark to that back row. Doris has come in, and I think he's been fantastic. He offers real variety in attack, ball carrying ability, and a presence at the breakdown as well. And he's been really, really good there. And I think Stander, he's complemented Stander. He's given Ireland an extra ball carrying player in the back row, and both Stander and himself have seemed to work very well together. And O'Mahony's line out, and then he's very good at the breakdown himself. He wouldn't be as quick as Josh van der Fleer or Will Connors, or have that kind of groundhog presence and ability to hunt down halfbacks and particularly the out halves and put pressure on them. But it's worked to this point for Ireland, and it seems to have got Stander and Doris playing really well. Doris is gone, Stander goes back 8. The one thing I probably didn't want to happen was Peter O'Mahony to go back 6 and Josh van der Fleer to come back in 7. And it's not their ability to perform. They're outstanding players, and they could play really well. I hope they do. But I just think Tipuric and Faletau, they have a thing in their heads that they can beat that back row. They've done it a couple of times before. They physically dominated, and for the last, in 2017 and 2019, they put a huge emphasis of getting at Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton and slowing Ireland's ball down and really being a nuisance there. And, they're brilliant players themselves. Faletau and Tipuric are 2 British and Irish Lions. Dan Lydiot has been in a Lions tour as well. He's going to come back in, as I said. And I just think it gives them a little bit of an edge. I would have liked to have just left O'Mahony at 7 for this game. It's a horses for courses thing, and bring in Rhys Ruddock or put Tyburn in the back row. It just would have put the Welsh thinking a little bit that it's not the same group that we've beaten before.
Well, is that down to specific? Sorry, Adrian, I was just going to ask: is that down to specific skill set? Is it down to O'Mahony? Is it down to van der Fleer? Who exactly are you targeting on the Welsh side of things that gives you cause for concern?
Tipuric, I think he's an incredible player. He's been so consistent for Wales, and there's Josh Navidi is another one. Josh Navidi and Tipuric were the 6 and 7 2 years ago. They were effectively 2 open sides. They destroyed us at the breakdown. Navidi had something like 27 tackles and a lot of carries as well in that game. And it's the effectiveness of those tackles. It's not just a soak tackle where somebody gets over the gain line, they tackle. It's a type of tackles they're putting in. They're holding you up. They're slowing the ball. They're counter-rucking. They're getting hands in. And it's just, it can get at Conor Murray, and they have an ability to do that. And it's not a physical thing that O'Mahony, Stander and Van der Fleer will take a backward step in Sunday. I just think the Welsh guys will think, well, we've done this on a number of occasions against Ireland, particularly in the games in Cardiff. It's incredible when you come to Dublin. Ireland seem to cope with it a lot better. But 2 years ago in that Grand Slam game that Wales won a Grand Slam, and the 2 years previous in 17, they just caused us all sorts of problems there. And because they're in such a precarious position of under so much pressure, they're going to try and get an edge physically on Ireland. And I really hope that's collectively as an Irish forward pack, and I'm sure Paul O'Connell will have gone through the team with this, and Andy Farrell will, and Simon Easterby as defence coach as well, will be putting an onus on the Irish team to step up, to be physical. We're down a ball carrier now.
Can I? Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you on that? Right, like you mentioned the Paul O'Connell point. Is there any of it that's line out related, given what we've seen over the last number of games?
Yeah, it is. It's an attitude around them all. It's the execution of the line out there. That's the technique stuff, the timing, the throw, the type of ball they're going to win, to hopefully launch a bit of attack and get the ball into Sexton's hands much quicker. Hence, get it into Gary Ringrose and Robbie Henshaw's hands quicker, so they can run at the Welsh backline and try and get a bit of width in the game. So, of course it is. It's down to attitude, and it's down to, you can be fired up going into these games, Adrian, but you've got to deliver as a unit, and you've got to set the tone early on. And you know, as I said a couple of times, Wales will come out with all guns a-blazing in Cardiff. Now, the crowd not being there does make a bit of a difference. It's a great stadium to play in. I've played there with a full Welsh crowd, but it's not that intimidating, but it's enthralling, if you like, as a player, because it's an incredible atmosphere. The Welsh public love their rugby. There's an electric atmosphere there. There's a lot of Irish scattered around the stadium all the time. That's all gone. So the players have got to generate their own emotion here. Who will have I think the Welsh players would love to have that crowd behind them to start. But so Ireland, that negates it a little bit, the away fixture. But you know, there's a reason why we haven't won there the last 3 occasions in the Six Nations is because they've come out and they've been more physical. They've frustrated the life out of Ireland, and they've performed very well. They have a lot of good players. So, you know, Ty Byrne looks like he's going to start in the second row. So there's a bit of grunt gone out of the team. Henderson hasn't played. Part of me with this Doris thing would have put Henderson into the second row. He hasn't played in a while, so that's probably the reason why it won't happen. And put Ty Byrne in the back row, or Rhys Ruddock at 6. I think Rhys Ruddock is his form has been brilliant. So there's a lot of chopping and changing around for one player being out. Effectively, there's three new people in the 6, 7, 8 jersey from the last game against Scotland because Doris is out.
Obviously, Ger and Owen have created a stir across the water. Quinny with the comments during the week about how poor Wales are. I like the pressure, obviously, on Andy Farrell now, right? Like heading into game number 10, I think it is this weekend, and like there's been so much chatter here about the fact that the progress maybe hasn't been as evident as we might have liked it to have been. I suppose the question I have is, like, have we seen Andy Farrell's Ireland yet? Is there another iteration to come? Are we going to see it now? And if we don't, what does it mean, I suppose, for his future?
Yeah, I think what it means, Adrian, is we've seen glimpses. I think we've certainly seen glimpses of it. The first half in Paris, we saw some more ingenuity, a little bit different from Ireland. They put the French team thinking a bit. We're quite unlucky with the 2 tries that they conceded. Obviously, the game went away from them in the second half, and you know their confidence has been shot and damaged in the last 2 years. The Autumn Nations, I think there was some very good parts in that first game against Wales, and typically an Irish thing. Well, we won convincingly in that game, first opening game against Wales in the Nations Cup, and we all said, well, Wales are useless. We still don't know where Ireland are. Got physically kind of dominated, not as much as the previous ones against England. And there was huge problems in the lineup with that really cost us that performance. Georgia was terrible. And there was really positive signs against Scotland in the end. There was a big improvement. So it's kind of up and down the last 18 months. And I just think that they're trying to play a little bit differently. And the Six Nations, Adrian, isn't about throwing the ball from winger to winger to winger and going over and back. You have to play cup rugby and smart rugby. But the biggest change I'd like to see is us being way more efficient with the quality of ball when we have the ball, particularly off our scrum and our line-out. The line-out is I've been harping on about this for a while. The quality of ball has to be a lot better. Our maul hasn't been effective against the opposition in a long time. The maul is such a brilliant weapon to really drain the legs out of the opposition and get a massive kind of burst of energy throughout your own team. Our maul hasn't been rumbling in a long, long time. So it's an area that we need to get better in. And the breakdown, you go back to the Joe Schmidt era. What made us so successful in that time was how efficient Ireland were and how good they were at the breakdown. So we're not going to physically overpower teams that we play and dominate them because of size. I think the tempo, and we're only dreaming to think we can get back to where we were in 2018. But there's a template there, and a lot of these players know what collectively they have to do. And a lot of that comes down to coaching as well. There has been a number of young players introduced into the group, and that's why I was so disappointed about Doris, because I think he really could have kicked on and been a star of the Six Nations. Hopefully he'll come back pretty soon. But they've got to be far more shrewd in what they do around the breakdown as well. So I think O'Connell will add to that. He's been there, done that. He's always been raving about how he loved the detail that Joe Schmidt would give them. And I'm sure he'll try and replicate that with the players, and has done. And but look, I was doing a show with Virgin Media the other day, a preview show, and Rog, I mentioned the first game. I didn't really care about performance, which is kind of a throwaway comment. Of course you want a good performance, but Ireland need to show the same desperation and emotion to win this game on Sunday, because if they start and get a win in Cardiff, which is incredibly hard to do, and I know Gerard and Owen think Wales are useless, and they've been poor in 2019, but I know myself, you kind of, that's very, very dangerous territory, and I'm sure none of the Irish players will be thinking, they know what to expect. They know that Wales are going to be rubbing their hands together here, and the results have been poor in 2020, but I guarantee you they're going to come out all guns a-blazing on Sunday. And going back to what I was saying about what Rog said, he said he wants performance, but I'd sacrifice performance on Sunday for a real roll the sleeves up, energy and tempo and aggressive type display from Ireland, just to get a win, be on the front foot and be the enforcers rather than being the ones that have been bullied and frustrated by Wales.
We asked you, given what the lads were saying about how poor Wales were, we asked you to have a stab at a combined 15 of Ireland and Wales, given available players. You've gone for a 7-8 split. Some people might be surprised.
And look,
just
it's again, making me unpopular here with players by doing this, which is I'm not so happy to be doing that, because you're splitting hairs with some players.
Yeah.
If Wales beat Ireland on Sunday,
go on.
But Adrian, if Wales beat Ireland on Sunday, which they're this is a 50-50 game, which sounds good from Ireland because it's away, but it's 50-50. I can go either way.
Listen, Quinny, you listen to some pundits. You listen to some pundits, and they'd have you believe that it's going to be a cakewalk on Sunday. Take us through the team, will you? We've about two or 3 minutes here. Take us through the team.
Yeah, okay. So you made me do this. I'd go 15 Lee Halfpenny, 14 Keith Earls. There'll be an argument for George North there, but he's been hot and cold. Wonderful player, and again, someone who's caused us a lot of problems. 13 Jonathan Davies, which is Harrison and Gary Ringrose, but Davies has been on a couple of Lions tours, and there's not a lot between any of these. Robbie Hench has been playing really well at 12. Johnny Williams came in there for Wales in November, and good player as well, but I picked Henshaw. The left wing, Josh Adams is gone off the squad for breach and protocol, so it looks like Lewis Rees-Zammit will start there, an incredibly exciting young Welsh player, and it looks like James Lowe will start in the left wing. You could go either way, but I'd probably pick James Lowe just for that, the way he's performed for Leinster in the last couple of years. Different level international. Your man, Lewis Rees-Zammit has that a little bit more spark and probably a bit more energetic, but James Lowe has been brilliant for Leinster, so I'll pick him.
If Adams hadn't gone to his gender reveal party, Quinny, which one would you choose in one word?
Yeah, I'd be picking Adams. I think he's performed consistently. You've got to perform consistently at this level to be seen as a player who's international standard. So Lewis Rees-Zammit and James Lowe, we haven't seen enough of them yet. We know there's massive potential there. Bigger Sexton. I think Wales will pick Dan Bigger. They could pick Jared Evans or Callum Sheedy, but I think they'll go back to Bigger. And then again, you're kind of splitting hairs with, both of them on the last Lions tour in New Zealand. Sexton was a starter, so they both had their issues and underperformed for the countries, but they have incredible potential and they've been there and done that. So I'm going to pick Sexton. At 9, Thomas Williams he's been brilliant for the Blues, and he's probably one bright spark for Wales in November. Incredibly dangerous. He's probably, you're splitting hairs with him and Gareth Davies for that starting spot. And of course, we know if Conor Murray performs well, Ireland will do well on Sunday. So I'm picking Thomas Williams at 9. A back row of Faletau, Tipuric and Stander. I just think it's Faletau has struggled with his form a little bit, but I just think he's too good a player to leave out, and Tipuric as well. And I can't leave Stander out either. Again, you could go for a number of different combinations there. James Ryan, Alan Wynne-Jones in the second row, and Andrew Porter, Ken Owens and Cian Healy in the front row.
Very good. That's a tasty little back row.
Loads of people will have different opinions on it, but there's still a lot of players there that you wouldn't say are superstar international players. Wynne-Jones for Wales can be an incredibly good player, and he can go on and make a real name for himself. He's done well for Wales. Ken Owens is a big boost back for them. He's a great player. I think he's a real leader for Wales. So it's 8 Irish, 7 Welsh. Welsh people could say, well, it should be 8 or 9 Welsh and 6 or 7 Irish. Monday morning, it'll be easy pick this, and you hate picking it. We did this a few years ago when Ireland won a Grand Slam, and you get, it can go pear-shaped on you. But I think it's, again, it's a 50-50 split there, and the matches, and it's close on the selections as well. But that'll all change Monday morning, depending who wins.
I think you've placated the Welsh nicely. Enjoy the rugby over the weekend, Quinny. Thanks a million.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.
Thanks a lot. 9:10 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're live in association with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Still plenty to come on the show. We're going to hear from Brian O'Driscoll before 10 o'clock, and we're going to crown our World Cup of Pundits winner, and also a crappy quiz to come. But we're back after these with this week's Cold Cuts.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB.
Don't shoot. Oh, he dinged it. It's a goal! It's a goal! 6-1. What a ball! Oh, 15 seconds left. That is amazing.
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, study the form with our Racing Post Spotlight before watching the action with free live streaming on all UK and Irish horse races. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette. Made of what matters.
All right, it's 12 minutes past 9 on this Friday morning. You are watching OTB AM, and right now it's time for the home of the anti-hot take. Take so cold that they're going to leave you feeling like you've just had a thumbs up emoji from Stephen Donnelly. It's time for Cold Cuts.
I am flabbergasted. Maguire. And they're here. Shocking. I'm disgusted. Maguire. And they're here. Get close to people. Move your feet. Move your feet. Maguire. And they're here. I am flabbergasted. I'm not too happy with all that. No. Maguire. I would be swinging punches at that guy. They're here. Swinging punches, swinging punches, swinging punches, swinging punches. Maguire. And they're here. I'm fuming here watching this game of football.
All right, it's Cold Cuts. In at number 4 this week, it's the Burnley manager Sean Dyche, who got desperately sidetracked at his press conference during the week. A reporter suggesting that he looked like Mick Hucknall, and away it went.
No, we're not. We're raising ourselves to looky likeys. Looky likeys make the world go. Have you never sat in a pub? Well, although that seems like a distant memory, with your mates and just found looky likeys in the pub. It's one of the best bits of fun you'll ever have in a night. Trust me, just do it. The next time you're allowed in a pub, sit with some friends. You're probably only allowed 3, but anyway, sit with some friends or something, and just look for looky likeys. Brilliant fun.
That is Sean Dyche from his press conference this week. He does paint, to be fair to him, quite the picture of a night in the town with the Dyche.
On holiday is brilliant. It's a brilliant family game. Looky likeys on holiday. You get your kids at it. Once they're of an age, fantastic fun. Because then people nudge each other and they do that thing where they go, oh, Dad, I've got one. Look, over there, left. And they go, bungle. It's go, well, how do you even know bungle? You know what I mean?
But then they become that for the whole holiday, don't they?
Yeah. So as soon as you see him and you, yeah. So then every night you're at a restaurant, you nudge him and go, look, Bungle's in again. There's Bungle. Brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't been out in a night out and thought, oi, that guy looks like a 6-foot TV bear from the 80s. Okay, clip 3 from Sean Dyche before we move on to number 3. And anyway, it's he's a serious manager, as we all know. He has a serious job in his hands, and there's literally nothing that's going to distract Sean Dyche from keeping Burnley in the Premier League. Absolutely nothing.
Right, come on, Alex. Let's bring us back to normality. It's flatliners again.
I've got some boring
this lockdown
questions.
period, I'm already like this. Oh, God. Come on, Alex. Let's do your job properly and let's ask me a really inane question and I'll answer.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's your job. It's all right. And my job's to answer. So crack on. Hang on, there's a cat. Hang on, there's a cat. I can't concentrate. There's a cat. And I was going to use the other word, but then everyone will start laughing. I know everyone will start laughing if I use the other word, so I had to call it a cat. Because if I use the other word, everyone will laugh, and then we go, ha, and I go, what? It's just a word. It's only a word. And then they go, look at the age of you all. And they go, yeah, but it's still a funny word. You know what I mean? And then they go, and then it just goes pear-shaped from there on in. So I'm going to call it a cat. All right, just to be clear, Dan.
That was crunchy, by the way.
I think, I look like him. Is that not a cat I look like? Because he's ginger, isn't
yes.
it? So I look
you
like
and
that
you
cat.
and this cat, never seen in the same room before.
See, this is great fun now. We're all having great fun. That's it. Just from a cat. And the other word that we're not allowed to say, but everyone's now thinking it. It's just great fun. That word alone is worth thinking about and making yourself laugh. See, lockdown's so boring, we're now laughing at cats. And not the other thing.
Yeah, well, look at it. At least it all worked out against Manchester City in the end. Owen, you're a big fan of Sean Dyche's humour?
I just want to apologise to everybody this morning for the image of Bungle we put on screen. People of a similar vintage to myself will only be becoming familiar with Bungle this morning. Jesus, this thing is terrifying. I'm going through Google Images right now. Oh my God, this is way too early to be bringing this sort of creep up on screen. This is the most freaky thing that's ever been created for children's television, and no one comes close. This is horrifying. This is the start of a Stephen King novel, this guy Bungle. This is not a good morning.
I was fairly certain he meant Zippy before I googled it, I have to say, but Bungle, there we go. Right, in at number 3 this week, it's some intergenerational baiting right here on OTB AM.
So that punishment will deliver winners. And like, you remember Tetris when you played it on the Game Boy and you have that moment where you have that Tetris and that sound? That is going to be the sound very shortly when I tip winners on Virtual Insanity, because I will actually go insane if I don't start tipping winners shortly.
Can I just ask Owen, do you know what a Game Boy is?
Owen, you've been waiting about 10 days to have a chirp back at Ger, so the floor is yours.
I'm just sick of this. Absolutely sick of this. The patronising, the back in my day, I'm on my high horse because I was born, whatever, 50 years before you, sort of nonsense that goes on in the show. Do you know what a Game Boy is? Like, are you actually for real? I was deeply offended, and I'm glad I've had the last laugh.
That's definitely what's happened here. In at number 2 on Cold Cuts this week, for the second week running, we're back to the centre of global smart sport. Smart thinking in the NFL. It's very smart.
Next thing that's very important to me is that we build a smart football team, that we have a smart football team here. And I know we have the people in place to do that. The first part of that, the first part of being smart is knowing what to do. We're gonna have systems in place that are easier to learn. All right, complicated to the defense or offense that they're going against, or the special teams group they're going against, but easy for us to learn. Because when we can when we can learn our system and we can get good at our system, then our talent can take over. Less thinking equals talent take over, but we need to have systems in place, and we will have systems in place to do so.
Yes, it is smart, and it's simple, and you just need systems, and it's all very, very confusing, but smart, and also really simple.
Less thinking equals talent takeover. Less thinking equals talent takeover is the takeaway.
Oh, I was confused by it. Top of the charts this week is not Keys and Gray, but another deadly duo. It all kicked off on Monday's AM. Owen and Ger tearing into Welsh rugby, withering commentary on the chances of our Celtic cousins in the Six Nations this year, that I'm sure has not been lost on our audience this morning. And at the speed of 2008 Shane Williams, Wales Online were on it in double quick time. Wales are just rubbish, and we're going to trash them. Irish pundits belittle Welsh team on air. It screamed from the virtual newspaper stall. And as you can see from the comment section, the entire population of Wales were pissed, and all of them had something to say. Every single one of them. Boy, were they seething. Take Leon Potter here, for example. Without the Welsh crowd, they're probably right. They seethed. Comment from Tomo. Does anyone actually disagree with their assessment in their heart of hearts? It's most likely it will be an annihilation. Yeah, they were fuming. Can't disagree with them, said Biggest Dickus. And Bort here, who said, well, they're not exactly wrong. It's actually refreshing to see pundits be honest in their assessment, as Owen and Ger continue to be called pundits. Now, it's been a long 12 months for everybody, and yes, many people are seeing things clearer and calmer, but you'll be comforted to know, dear viewer, this morning that there is still a beating heart of Welsh pride. There's still a song in the valley. The Six Nations has not yet begun, but there's clearly a concern that the wooden spoon is going to be theirs this year. So they're lashing out, like Chelmsford Taff here, who eases us in by saying we're the new English. What an insult. Pipsad, come out in the open and shoot your mouth off, you gutless nerds. There's literally nothing worse in 2021 than the faceless keyboard warriors taking pot shots from their bunkers. Facebook, you would think, should take a look into that. More truth bombs from Camillus. Two Irish pundits, in inverted commas, are just two planks looking for attention and picked up by Wales Online as easy clickbait. Now, hang on a second here, Camillus. What is it about this sports broadcast that makes you think we're actually looking for an audience? Let's see what your Paddy Me money is on Wales, says Alan Duke, who's either a former Minister for Justice or a pissed up Pontypridd plank. And lastly, we save the best to last. This one is from Carlinho. Ger Gilroy and Eoin Sheahan, he asks, having the gall, Carlinho, to spell Owen's name correctly, I wouldn't know them from a bar of soap.
Yeah, God, that's a tough one to see now from Carlinho. Gutless nerds definitely gets to me as well, and my tail will be between my legs now for the next couple of days after hearing that. As damaging to my psyche hearing all this as looking through Google Images at Bungle Bear this morning, that's for sure.
You've annoyed them, and that's this week's Cold Cuts.
I am flabbergasted. Maguire. And they're here. Shocking. I'm disgusted. Maguire. And they're here. Get close to people. Move your feet. Move your feet. Maguire. And they're here. I am flabbergasted. I'm not too happy with all that, no. Maguire. I would be swinging punches at that guy. They're here. Swinging punch, swinging punch, swinging punch, swinging punch. Maguire. And they're here. I'm fuming here watching this game of football.
Yeah, Roy Keane ending Cold Cuts for this week. We'll be back to Roy in just a second, so hold fire on that. But I want to remind you that the latest episode of the TG Carr series, Finney, will go to air on Wednesday, coming at 9:30, and in the spotlight next week is going to be Kenneth Egan, and this is an episode worth watching. Plenty of people familiar with Kenneth's story, taking home a silver medal, obviously, from Beijing in 2008, and some will be familiar with the subsequent battle with severe alcoholism, and it's in the spotlight, a very candid interview of his life and his escapades, and some great stuff in conversation with Kenneth and indeed with his mum. It's Finney, it's TG Carr, it's Wednesday, and it's 9:30, and we highly recommend that you go and check that out. But it is time, Eoin Sheahan, to crown the champion of our World Cup of Football pundits.
It certainly is, and it has been quite a week we've had, and we thought that this was going to be an absolute walk-away win for Roy Keane. It has not proved to be the case. Our Instagram followers, very different to our Twitter followers, it seems, but I can confirm Roy Keane is the winner with 56% of the vote. Gary Neville with quite a comeback once we shifted social media platform this morning, but Roy Keane held on for the win. Congratulations, Roy. You are the greatest pundit in the world.
Who gets your vote on?
Well, I was always a Jamie Carragher fan from the outset, and I think he got dumped out quite early. So it was like my tip for Spain to win the last Football World Cup. It had a fairly similar fate to my punditry World Cup prediction, which just ended up in tears. And I guess Manchester United fans everywhere are delighted that their two heroes managed to do battle in the final.
Very good. Okay, we'll look at 56% and 44%. Roy is the king, the crowned king. By the way, a reminder that coming up over the weekend, Saturday from 1 o'clock on the radio, it's going to be Six Nations preview panel. Keith Wood, Jonathan Davies and Mike McCarthy are going to join John for that. That's going to be an absolute belter from 1:30 there. The show itself underway from 1, and then 3 to 5, it's OTB Football Saturday. As always, David Myler, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward will pick through all the day's games there. And then over to Sunday, the paper review with Bernard Jackman and Cleena Foley will be from 11:30 on OTB social channels, and then on the radio from 2 o'clock it'll be live Premier League commentary. Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr will bring you Wolves against Leicester, and then from 4:30 it's Liverpool against Manchester City in the company of Nathan and Damien Delaney. And we'll also have plenty of updates, by the way, in the Wales-Ireland game as well, all in the company of Johnny Murphy. He'll be taking in that game for us, so that is what's to come over the next little while. Owen, enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Take it easy. Chat to you next week. We're going to bring you some Brian O'Driscoll before 10 o'clock right now on OTB AM. We've got the crappy quiz.
Chris Waddle.
Oh, you're kidding me.
September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know it's not right.
Anybody else?
Leash, was it?
Like, that is one of the most stupid questions.
Darius Vassell? Seriously, you all need to just stay quiet. This is getting really annoying doing this quiz.
What is going on here?
Welcome along to the shoutiest segment on Irish radio. It's the scintillating, it's the stupefying, it's the splendido crappy quiz. Every Friday, we pit 3 of Team Off the Ball up against each other in a no-holds-barred quiz of sporting factoids at the end of the week. Allow me to welcome today's contestants. Our first contestant today went full Shane Ross on last week's quiz, piggybacking on the success of another contestant. Nevertheless, he is the champ and looking to become the champ. Give it up for Adrian, who's your daddy, Barry.
Nothing much to add to that, Owen, all true. Fact.
Big birthday celebrations in the house, we can see over your shoulder.
Big birthday celebrations. We're dinosaur crazy here, and it's actually pretty good, yeah. Like, obviously, you can't have the usual kind of party and all that sort of stuff, but like, we pretty much just ate sweets from 8 o'clock in the morning right through into bedtime. So, and the kids enjoyed it as well, so that was nice.
Hey. Yeah, happy birthday, Adrian. Our next contestant today is back for the first time in 2021. He's watched on with his solemn shake of the head every week as contestants have bickered and moaned their way to unspectacular quiz wins. Back to put manners on his colleagues, it is Nathan Nate Dog Murphy.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Good to have you back.
Some shit show while I've been away.
Have you been watching?
Standard has been dropping consistently. Where's Gilroy today? He'd been given a lot of mouth over the last few weeks.
He's crying. He's hiding.
A lot of controversy last week, and Jurgen Roy is off in a huff this week.
He's off with the huff.
He's off with the huff.
He wasn't happy, Nathan, that myself and Tommy won last week, so he got a bit.
But I don't understand. I was getting confused. Have the rules changed that you suddenly became a tag team?
No, it was just like team effort.
The Legion of Doom.
Short
yeah, look, we won't get into last week. I got.
I heard Jojo prematurely push the button,
and got Tommy out of a hole. We had to join them up last week. If you weren't with us last week, you missed Tommy and Adrian having to join forces to try and take down Cher. And as a team, they combined very well to take him down, which brings us on to our last contestant today, who was like the Gestapo agent in Raiders of the Lost Ark last week, as we witnessed his face melting in public and dramatic fashion. Never has a crappy quiz contestant crumbled in such a way before. That being said, he is the co-champ and back to reclaim his crown. Give it up for the Meath Hill Billy Tommy Rooney.
Hello. I wasn't sure if I'd come back this week, given all the crap last week.
Good to have you back. As ever, the format is a classic crappy quiz with a series of questions on different themes, then onto the slip and slide of trivia, which is the rapid fire round. You can podcast a crappy quiz on the OTB Sports app. You can give us a 5 out of 5 on your favourite podcast app as well, even if that doesn't represent your actual opinion. And please send any questions you have via Twitter DM to @offtheball. Round 1, the boring questions round, never multiple choice. Question 1 for you, Adrian. If you include the home nations, the 5 nations and the 6 nations, which country has picked up the wooden spoon more than any other in Europe's top international rugby competition?
Rugby man, Adrian Barry, from 2 provinces at the one time. Sorry, it's 3 provinces. He's from Connacht, but supports Leinster, but was very much on that Munster bandwagon for as long as possible.
From Leinster, of course. Actually, know exactly where I'm from. But thanks, Nathan, anyway, for that confusion. Italy's obviously got the vast majority of them for the last 20 years, but so it's a question as to whether.
I hear his kids are giving him the answers. That's the most sense we've heard from the Barry household in a quiz in a long time.
Has Ireland picked up, I suppose, in the region of 20 over the years? Could be there or thereabouts.
We're going to have to cut his thinking time so that the mic gets muted a bit more here.
The Scots, although they were a powerhouse.
Scots were a powerhouse.
The Ulster Scots, was it?
The Scots were. Look at your history, lads. Going to go with. It's tempting to not go for them, but I mean it's very recent. But they've just won so many of them over the last 20 years. I am going to go with Italy.
What? Sure, the Six Nations has been going on, whatever they used to call it, for about 120 years.
I know, but they would have been. It's hard to think.
No, they wouldn't. Ireland and Scotland won it every year.
Yeah, and it's Ireland is the answer. Ireland have 25, Scotland have 24. England not far behind with 19, Wales 17.
See, it's not such an outlandish idea.
Tough question, mate.
Italy was last.
Now, I'm looking forward to this one. Nathan's first question in about 6 months. How soft is Owen going to go here?
Question 1 for Nathan. Keith Higgins is the latest Mayo footballer to hang up his boots. Oh. But who did he beat in the final to win his Nicky Rackard Cup medal in 2016?
This is easy, sure. Come on. Any Mayo man worth his bloody salt has this one.
Nicky Rackard. Tyrone?
It's a good question. Well done.
Who knows it? Tommy,
I don't know.
What was the question?
Who lost the Nicky Rackard Cup final in 2016?
Lancashire or something.
No, it was Armagh. You were close. Question 1 for you, Tommy. The January transfer window wasn't a classic, but can you tell me the most expensive signing made by a Premier League club in the last 12 months?
12 months?
Mm-hmm.
Damn it. I'm not going to get this right. In the last 12 months, I'm going to say it was Kai Havertz.
Boom.
Get in there, Jojo. Tommy. Hit my music, Jojo.
That was so much easier than what we got.
That was a very straightforward question. I had that.
Would you actually have got that?
I had that, yeah. 100% had that, yeah.
Round 2. Tommy's 1-0 up. Round 2 is the Great Sports People of Wales round. So we here at OTB respect and admire everything Wales has done as a sporting nation. And in this round, we will pay tribute to greatness that they have achieved. Question 2 for you, Adrian. Who was the last full-time Wales rugby coach before Warren Gatland?
Oof, that is a good question. First press conference I ever covered was a Wales rugby press conference with the Rob Howley days, the Quinnell brothers. And I was in college, I was 18, I looked about 12, and one of the Quinnell brothers was taking the piss out of me in front of all his buddies, looking like the big guy. And that convinced me that I should...
Why was he pulling the piss out of you?
Because I looked about 12 and I was going around with a microphone. Okay. Rob Howley, Rob Howley...
You can't talk about the Quinnell brothers and not do a Welsh accent.
There's only one man in this quiz at the minute that can do that, Nathan, so feel free anytime you want.
Have you ever subsequently interviewed the Quinnell brother that was bullying?
I don't know which one it was. I remember, pretty sure Jonathan Davies was a gent, Rob Howley was a gent, and Neil Jenkins. They entertained me and my nonsense. I have no answer to the question other than a punt. God, I'm struggling to come up with a name at all, but I'm going to go with a punt. And he was probably still playing at the time. Die Young.
Mike Ruddock?
No, not Mike Ruddock. Close though. Mike Ruddock was 2 or 3 before Gatland. The answer was Gareth Jenkins.
It's always one of them.
You just said something like that, shouldn't I? That's
really
like Paddy Murphy.
Exactly. If you put in your details, give me a generic Welsh name. Gareth Jenkins is what.
To be fair, Die Young is not bad either.
No, it's good. Good shout, but no points.
Question
2 for you, Nathan. Unfortunately, this is not a Hal Robson canoe question, but can you name the last Welshman to play in the Ryder Cup?
I can. I know exactly who it is. I'm just making sure there was nobody last time out that I'm skipping.
Owen, you can tell that Owen likes having Nathan back in the quiz because he gives him good questions.
Jamie Donaldson.
Correct. No sound effect for you.
Oh,
but,
so easy.
Jamie Donaldson is correct. You wrote it down.
That's ridiculous.
God.
Like, Golf Weekly host gets piss easy Golf Weekly question.
Well, he did earn
question.
the winning point in, was it Glen Eagles under Paul McGinley?
See, I've never seen you do that, Adrian. Revert to writing your answer down and showing.
Because I knew if I said it after the Havertz question that you'd all say, "Oh no, you never got that."
Right. Okay. It's a good way of actually proving yourself right in the end, and you will have the last laugh, I guess.
And then the thing is, you never have to reveal it if you haven't got it right.
It's true. Win-win. Tommy. Ryan Giggs is one of 5 Welsh people to win the BBC Sports Personality of the Year award. Can you name any of the others?
Geraint Thomas.
Boom.
Great shout.
From 2.
How would it gone? Joe Calzaghe?
Joe Calzaghe, also correct.
The long jumper. What was his name? Jonathan
Edwards. Jonathan Edwards was?
No.
No, he wasn't. No, see, not like pure posh English.
Jonathan Edwards, not Welsh.
Did Jones win it?
No.
Did Jones
What about
win
Young?
it? Did Jones win it?
There was a Dye who did win it. Dye Rees won it, and David Broom was the other one who won it.
Woosnam never win it.
Woosnam never won it, no.
Oh.
They love their Dyes over there, don't they?
They certainly do. Tommy, you're on 2 points. Nathan, you're on 1. Adrian, you're on 0. We move on to round 3, which is the GOAT round. Ahead of the Super Bowl this week, this round will test your knowledge on those many, many people esteemed enough to be called the one and only greatest of all time. Adrian, question 3 for you. Which of the following numbers is the highest? A, the number of times Tom Brady has been crowned NFL MVP. B, the number of times Lionel Messi has won the Ballon d'Or. Or C, the number of times Cristiano Ronaldo has won the Ballon d'Or. So which of those is the highest number? Brady as NFL MVP, Messi Ballon d'Or, Ronaldo Ballon d'Or.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Messi is ahead of Ronaldo on Ballon d'Ors.
What's icon?
Oh.
So I'm going to make it between Messi and Tom Brady.
You're waiting on Jojo.
Pretty much, yeah. Either that or Nathan's facial reactions, neither of which have given me much of a steer so far. But in all of that, I'm probably going to go for Brady MVPs.
No. Ronaldo? No, Messi was the answer.
Did
Brady's only
Ronaldo
won.
win this year?
Ronaldo's on 5, Lionel Messi's on 6, and Tom Brady's been crowned NFL MVP 3 times. So Messi was the answer.
So the old Ballon d'Or World Player of the Year split makes it quite difficult.
That doesn't really, Nathan. I was correct in my assertions. You would have been bottom drawer with that, unfortunately.
You got it wrong.
Yeah, well, you were also saying that
you got it wrong.
Messi, which was
nothing
incorrect.
else matters.
Incorrect.
Nathan,
I didn't lose any points first. Go on.
Which of the following numbers is highest? The number of Super Bowls Tom Brady has played in, the number of Ryder Cups Tiger Woods has played in, or the number of championship games Henry Shefflin has lost?
Oof.
That's a good question.
So they're all in or around 10. Shefflin must have lost. Like he was there from 2000-ish. There's 4 or 5 there.
Are you including games he missed through injury?
Like, have you gone back and are you guaranteed that he played?
You're saying he played in these games as Quizmaster, yeah?
You can guarantee that he played in all these games. He was on the pitch for these games. You have done that level of research, because I'm sure you wouldn't put out a question that you haven't done that level of research for.
Wouldn't go near it. Now, I will say this. If there was to be a Wikipedia page that handily had all his championship appearances listed, then that would be very handy. But no, of course, I went back and watched every single game.
No, Nathan.
Oh, they're all around. I am going to go.
What are you counting?
I'm counting Tigers Ryder Cups. No, that was my answer. That was my answer. I said I'm counting.
Jojo.
So I'm going for Tom Brady.
Tom Brady's correct.
Yes.
No, come on.
So Tiger's about 7, Shefflin's about 8, and Tom Brady's 10. Am I right?
Tom Brady's 9, and Tiger and Shefflin are both 8.
Oof.
I didn't fully know what was going on there because I was distracted by the kids. But did he just give an answer and then retracted him? No. He's not getting the point for that.
I didn't retract any answer. I didn't give the answer.
Jojo's handing out a point again this week.
I don't know what to feel outraged about here.
No, you'd want to go get that prematurity checked out somewhere.
He's got Nathan back this week, and he's given him a free point. That is an incredible statistic. Henry Shefflin has only lost 8 championship games, the same number of Ryder Cups.
Well, if it's true, of course.
Do you know what's more incredible? It's more incredible that Jojo has made the same bloody mistake 2 weeks in a row. That's more incredible than last week's record.
Nathan, you're on 2. Tommy, you're on 2. Can you take the lead here? Which of the following numbers is the highest? A, the number of career passes attempted by Tom Brady. B, the number of career rebounds clocked up by Michael Jordan. Or C, the number of career assists clocked up by LeBron James.
Jordan.
No, incorrect.
There's no point messing around there, boys. Didn't have a clue.
LeBron.
The answer is Tom Brady. He's got 10,500 career passes.
Wow.
Jordan has 6,500 career rebounds, and LeBron James has 9,500 career assists. So the scores at the end of round 3 are Tommy 2, Nathan 2, and Adrian 0. Round 4 is the Fun Free Magic number round. Contestants get 3 points for getting the number exactly right. If no one manages that, the nearest contestant who doesn't go bust gets 2 points. The second closest gets 1 point. I'm going to state that we can only accept the answer that's written on your paper. I'm also going to have to ask for your pens once the music ends. So if you don't mind, give us the following number. The number of times 9 goals has been scored in a Premier League match by one team, plus the number of tries scored by Jacob Stockdale in Ireland's Grand Slam winning Six Nations campaign in 2018, plus the number of times before this year that a team has played a Super Bowl in their home stadium, plus the number of Irish players signed up to play with AFLW teams this season. Your 30 seconds expire when Sinatra sings Bright Shiny Beads. So the number of times a single team has scored 9 goals.
Me too. Tommy's literally doing a series on the AFLW. That's tap in right there.
The number of tries Stockdale scored in the 2018 Six Nations. The number of times Super Bowl has been participated in by a home team. Plus the number of Irish players signed up to play with the AFLW this season. Pens down. Nathan, so confident. What do you got?
24.
24. Bust. Tommy?
What?
25.
Tommy, what have you got? 25. Adrian?
I mean, I could lie.
No, show us your paper.
Show us your paper.
29. They've all gone bust, so nobody scores.
So
what is it? 14, 3, 5.
14, 6, 4, 0.
Let's go back to the start. The number of times 9 goals has been scored in a Premier League match is 4.
Yeah.
So you've got Wigan as well as Ipswich and Southampton twice. The teams that have conceded the 9 goals, obviously. The number of tries scored by Jacob Stockdale in 2018 was
6.
6. How many was it?
I'm after messing this up.
Whoa!
I'm after messing this up. I'll accept that I made. I'm just going to check this very quickly. I'm going to check this quickly. It can't be. I have 4. I have 4 jotted down. It's 7. It's 7.
Oof,
so
6.
The answer is 25.
Oh,
which Tommy gets.
Yeah.
So 4 plus 7. The number of times before this year that a team has played a Super Bowl at home is 0. Never happens. And the number of Irish players signed up to play the AFLW is 14.
14.
So, sorry, my apologies.
14. That gives Tommy a distinct advantage. In fairness, when it comes to the AFL, Tommy is to the extent that his girlfriend is getting concerned about the amount of Irish women he's texting late at night on a regular basis. It's just getting a little bit disturbing, Tommy.
She confided that in you because she hasn't said that to me yet.
Well, why is the phone buzzing all the time, Tommy?
My notifications are off, Nathan. Don't worry.
That's it. 25. I think that's the first time I've got the rapid fire or the numbers round right.
I was tempted by 7, and I thought no.
Well, unfortunately, you might live to regret that. Tommy, you've opened
I get a point, don't I?
On Nathan. No, you don't get a point because Tommy got it bang on. You would have got a point if nobody got it right. On to the final.
Here we go, boys.
You can't just change the rules.
No.
Yeah, you can't just change the rules. Yeah.
That if nobody gets that, the nearest contestant who doesn't go bust gets 2 points, and the second closest.
So what's the score?
The score is 5-2-0 in favour of Tommy.
Best thing to happen to me, I've had an ice cream delivery in the last few minutes.
Is that an actual? Oh no, that's a Lego ice cream, is it?
Oh, that looks tasty. Our winner tonight will be decided in the round.
Nathan not one. Nathan not one.
I'm at 2.
He's on 2. Our winner tonight will be decided in the round that separates the men from the boys, the Jan Mulbeys from the Jan Bednareks. It's a no theme in particular, ridiculously easy rapid fire round. So the score you get in this round will be added to your score in the previous round. 40 seconds for everyone to answer from the same set of questions. So we start with Tommy, then on to Nathan, then on to Adrian. If you get a question correct, I'll keep asking you questions until you get one wrong. And once you get one wrong, I move on to the next person and you get deducted 1 point. Tommy Rooney, are you ready?
I am. Let's go.
Your 40 seconds starts now. Which Six Nations ground has the largest capacity?
Twickenham.
Correct. Who is Manchester United's top scorer in this season's Premier League?
Rashford.
No, Bruno Fernandes. Brian Barry Murphy is manager of which English team?
Rochdale.
Correct. Troy Parrott has now gone on loan to which club?
Ipswich.
Correct. Name any Irish medalists at the last Olympics.
Annalise Murphy.
Correct. Which Frenchman was Six Nations player at the tournament last year?
Eddie Samaya.
No, Antoine Dupont. Max Kilman plays for which Premier League side, Adrian?
Burnley.
No, Wolves. Which province does Tom O'Toole play for, Tommy?
Ulster.
Correct. Which French team did Paul O'Connell sign for before his career-ending injury?
Stade Francais.
No, Toulon. In what year did Kilkenny last win in All-Irelands, Nathan? Time's
2015.
up. Correct.
2015.
Oh, yes. No. What
Nathan's got 1, 2, 3, so he's on 5. Tommy stays on 5. It's a tiebreaker. We may or may not have had technical issues with the timer there, but I asked 10 questions.
Yes. Oh, no.
Yes,
come on.
Yes.
Was the time up? Was the time up?
Adrian, let's not mislead here.
Three-way split.
Adrian got -1. You got minus points.
You're saying we should have a three-way split because it's a tie. I like it.
Adrian
Nathan, you're lucky.
-1 indeed.
You're lucky you got that point off Jojo earlier, bud.
Nathan on 5, Tommy on 5. So we move on to the how many Irish caps tiebreaker. So I tossed a coin before we came on air, and Nathan has won.
Sorry, now I'm just getting my coffee delivered to me here by the 2-year-old.
Oh, class!
Wow, very impressive.
Say hello.
That is a top class
Say
coffee.
hello, yeah, that's top
See what
class
I have, Rose,
coffee.
look.
Yeah, and look, see the Lego. Look at the Lego ice cream. Wow,
that's a nice ice cream.
It's Con's birthday, not your birthday. She gets very upset if you talk about other people's birthdays.
God, that is an incredible coffee.
That's, yeah.
It's
made
really
that all by
impressive.
myself. Yeah.
What are you making that with now?
The Nespresso
French
machine.
press?
No, the Nespresso machine.
And you have your...
I question how much time you have in your hands, Adrian, if you're, have time to be making your fancy coffee.
AeroPress, my big recommendation.
Do you generally have your children wait on you hand on foot?
Well, you got to, teach them some life lessons while they're stuck at home for 6 months.
Hold on. Can I just say something before we get into tiebreaker here? One of Nathan's young lads is really good at football trivia. So just make sure he's not in the room there so we can help out Nathan with this next one.
No, he's not. No. Fantasy football is his area of expertise.
Okay. Well, we got sidetracked there. We're on to the how many Irish caps tiebreaker. This is unbelievably tense.
How many
the tension, I'm not going to lie, was completely broken by the interruption of a coffee.
I apologise.
So let's just bring that tension back up to the pitch again. Nathan, do you want to go first or second?
Oh, second. Whew, nearly forgot the golden rule of the tiebreak.
Tommy, how many Ireland caps does Malcolm O'Kelly have?
Oh, Big Mal. Adrian knows this. Adrian's got his poster up in his wall and everything.
Is not enough an answer.
I feel like I have a bang on here, actually. Because I write his guest captions every single week whenever he's on.
Oh, every single week.
Well, whatever. He's on.
Unless, of course, Big Mal looks at it and goes, why do they keep putting that up every single week when it's wrong?
For some reason, 75 is in my head.
Is that your final answer?
It was. But yeah, that's my final answer, yeah.
75. Nathan, what are you going for?
Ooh. See, I had in my head it was less. But Big Mal's around for a long time.
I can picture it now. 75 Irish caps, Malcolm O'Kelly.
76.
Nathan wins. It's 92.
Yeah.
Play the music.
These all the captions been wrong for all those months.
Play the music. No wonder Big Mal never answers our calls.
So I got robbed last week because you combined my scores with Adrian.
How'd you get robbed?
And I got robbed this week because Nathan got the handy questions and the answer from Jojo.
And of course, the fact that I haven't been here so far this year means that all of the previous victories are pretty much wiped from the record because they didn't count. Get Gilroy back and let me take him down next week. I don't care which of these chumps you get rid of. In fact, I'll take on them all if you want.
I'm going to be gracious here. I'm going to say,
do a bit of work
Nathan,
on, get some more questions.
Well done. Hard luck, Adrian. I got a comment last week saying I was annoying.
I like the idea of
stop giving out.
Of another contestant.
Yeah, we might have to do that. Apologies to Malcolm O'Kelly, who's got 92 Ireland caps, which Adrian Barry would have got.
Are you apologising on behalf of the nation that it's not 120?
That's exactly what I'm doing. Nathan, enjoy our coffee. Enjoy the sweet aroma of your victory as well. We'll chat to you here next week.
Oh, yes.
On the Crappy Quiz.
Chris Waddle.
Oh, you're kidding me. September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
I know, it's not right.
Anybody else?
Leash, was it?
Like, that is one of the most stupid questions.
Darius Vassell? Seriously, you all need to just stay quiet. This is getting really annoying doing this quiz.
What is going on here?
Well, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. What's your response to what Adam Jones has said there? I think he's perfectly entitled to a pop back here.
Yeah, pistols at dawn. Yeah, of course he's entitled. You know, he needs to get one or two facts right, though, in that Ireland won the Grand Slam the year before Wales did. So it's not that long ago they have to look. But other than that, I think they're entitled to feel hard done by. But that's what they thrive on as well, is under Gats, you know, teams writing them off and saying that they were playing a boring style, where it was Warren ball, all this stuff. It used to feed into the psyche a bit of a little bit of playing with a bit of a chip on your shoulder. And I think you've to find some reason to get yourself back performing again, particularly when you're in a bit of a slump. I think you have to use sound bites for motivation. I think you can't rely on the crowd this weekend. And yeah, I suppose anytime someone writes you off or writes your nation off as a player or as a past player, you take it personally. You do. I think with regard to Jer's comments, sure the Irish camp won't be appreciating it too much, because I'm not sure how many too many times if we've gone over to Cardiff and annihilated any Welsh team, irrespective of what the forum guide has been in advance of it. And I personally feel as though it'll be much the same again. I think it'll be a close affair. I think they'll be playing knowing that their coaches tenure is on the line. Some of them will be playing for their international future as well. So that brings out the best in people and produces performances out of nowhere where it's been lacking in the past. So Six Nations rugby is very different than November series. There's something about it that there's an intangible about it that you can't get your head around until you get involved in it. And there's a ferocity to it that there isn't in other games when you play against these nations. So I think it's built up the week brilliantly, and we haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats. That's gone. So we're creating them ourselves via our own media, and I suppose we've got to deal with the repercussions of it in the Welsh media too.
Yeah, and look, there's been plenty of contributors this week on Off the Ball. Ronan O'Gara was bullish enough about Ireland's chances this weekend. Bo Keith Wood and Niamh Briggs expected an Irish victory on Sunday afternoon. And to take the context of this slump, Brian, it's 7 defeats in 10 games since Warren Gatland departed at the end of the last World Cup. Wales and Welsh supporters have been having a go at their team. It hasn't just been Irish pundits lobbing grenades across the Irish Sea here. No, and they have to accept the rationale for the comments. It's not just Irish comments. If we were playing against England, if we were playing against Scotland, you would have
similar ex-players and pundits, talking the same language, because in reality, since Warren Gatland left after the World Cup in Japan, it's been a steady decline for this Welsh team on the standards that they would expect of themselves. There haven't been that many personnel changes, so something is amiss. Perhaps you don't know how good you have it until it's gone. And Gats obviously, did some magical things with that Welsh team for over a decade, winning multiple Grand Slams and Six Nations. Wayne Pivac, via the Scarlets, was the great white hope of a different brand of rugby that maybe the Welsh crowd were hoping that would be a throwback to the greats of Barry John and Gareth Edwards, the exciting Welsh sides that maybe those individuals that winning wasn't enough. They wanted brilliant style rugby, and Wayne Pivac was the answer to that. But it hasn't quite transpired like they would have anticipated. I do think he's going to need time. But also he needs some of his big players to A, be fit and B, get back into form. You think about the likes of how important Jonathan Davis has been for Wales over the last decade. He had a terrible injury in the World Cup and has been out for a number of months and just playing his way back into form. Alan Wynne-Jones has been out since the November internationals. Is on the wrong side of his mid-30s. So there is going to be this next progression of players needing to come through, but those stalwarts of Welsh rugby really have to turn up for their coach now. And if they do that, Ireland, will have a brilliant game. If they play the way they've played over the last year, understandably, you anticipate Ireland to get the better of them, because even though Ireland aren't, maybe at a world-beating standard, I feel as though on the back of the last calendar performance, I think Ireland are in a better place across the board.
Before we look at the Irish selection options for this weekend, just in terms of Wales, to get your opinion as a former Test centre, it looks like George North could well play at centre this weekend. Josh Adams has picked up a 2-game suspension after his breach of the COVID protocols to go back and see his family, but all indications in the Welsh press are that North could well end up playing at 13 this weekend as opposed to in the back three.
Well, obviously he played there against Italy in their final game of the November series. I think there's good and bad, with George North in the centre. At times there's a feeling in Wales that he's been anonymous in games, that he's gone missing on the wing. So playing at 13 gives him more of an opportunity to get his hands on the ball. I thought in attack he looked aggressive in that Italian game. He carried hard, had a bit of bite about him. But I do feel as though he struggles in defence at times. And, for someone that it's a relatively new system. He's not got the same voice as what he was hearing with Sean Edwards for again, the best part of a decade. He's had a positional switch. So someone that's not playing there week in, week out with a new system in place, I just feel as though there's a bit of a vulnerability to him playing at 13, and I'm sure it'll be something that Ireland will have earmarked. Italy caught them on one occasion, scored a try when they were quite narrow and he played too high. I think, having not been in that position a huge amount over the course of his career, he's got to understand when to press hard and when to play soft. He sometimes get caught between two stools, and good passing teams can get him on the edge. It happened in the Six Nations last year, where I thought Wales got incredibly narrow in their defence. It's the worst I've seen them defensively for again 8, 9, 10 longer years since before Sean Edwards. It just shows what a good defensive coach and a defensive coach that lives and breathes it, what he instills into his team. And that was really missing in them and has been. And obviously Byron Hayward's been replaced with Gethin Jenkins. But with George North, I think it's his 99th cap. He's been around forever. It feels as though he's always been selected, but with no Josh Adams now and with no Liam Williams at fullback through suspension, those big players have to step up in times of need, and Wales really need him at this stage to churn out his best stuff, which we probably haven't seen for a good few years now.
The Ireland team will be named tomorrow lunchtime, I think around 12:30, so we have to wait for that. So we can do some speculation about who's going to play where, Brian. Decisions have to be made on this back row, which I'd imagine would be less of a conversation if Caelan Doris wasn't out with his concussion. I think he would have probably played at 8 with CJ Stander and Peter O'Mahony on either side. But now Andy Farrell has to probably work out, does he go for Will Connors? Does he go for Josh van der Fleer? There's a couple of different options here, maybe even Tadhg Beirne at 6 or Rhys Ruddock at 6 if he wants to go a little bit more physical. How would you be looking at this back row ahead of Sunday?
I think it's the balance of what you're looking for and whether you're, what ultimately you're looking for. The problem with losing Caelan Doris is that you've got one of your more efficient ball carriers. His footwork at the line, his leg drive, his ability to get the ball out of contact. We don't have that in any of our other ball carriers.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets